It's good. I'm
Softest,
gonna throw my hat
softest
on. I'll
kind
put my
nepenthe.
I'll put my hat on so that way I don't. I know ever since you asked me, you asked that question, why do you wear the hat? And now I'm like, I gotta like psychoanalyze myself and break myself down. I'm like, why do I wear this
It's because you are a faded hipster who is recalling the lost days of his youth,
hat? Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
I know.
trying to just relive.
I used to wear
Um,
suspenders too. I should go get those back out.
yeah, it's like a Steely Dan song, you know. It's like the time of our time has come and gone. We've
Yeah.
been waiting too long. Like
Did you
that.
ever see the video where Luke was on it and he like grew a mustache out? I think he had a mullet too, and Sherry and
Thompson or
someone else,
Johnston?
uh, no, Luke Thompson, and they just
Oh,
like and somebody just started making fun of him for it. And the next video he shaved it. I was like, oh man, you
oh man,
should have
that's
kept it,
fucking
Luke.
brutal. That's
Yeah,
brutal.
I'll have to find it again because he got on some call and I think Sherry was on it. And Sherry and somebody else were like both making jokes about his mustache, and I was like, "Oh, come
You
on!"
know, mustaches, they don't work for everyone. You need to just have the right kind of face. It's just got to accent your face the right way, you know.
There's all sorts of different mustaches too. It's like,
That's true.
yeah, I don't know.
That's true.
I've never done the twirling thing though, where you twirl it up at the
You
end.
know who does the twirling?
Who?
Parker Case.
Who's
You don't
that?
know who's Parker Case?
No.
Like in analytic philosophy podcasting, the analytic philosophy podcasting sphere, he's pretty well known. Um, he's he's like a reform bro, but like super cool and humble. Um, he's like a jujitsu wrestler. He's like super jacked. Um, and he has like this like handlebar mustache that's like really it's like out to here.
Dang.
And he calls it Parker's Pensies, even though it's supposed to be the French word pensée, like Blaise Pascal, Blaise, I guess one says. Blaise Pascal is his pensée, but he doesn't call it pensées, it's pensies.
That's funny.
So yeah, and he has this dope like dog that just grew out of being a puppy. And he's pretty much got it going on. I mean, I'll concede that. I mean, I'm not a big fan of his theology, but is he living the dream in several key respects? It's fairly undeniable.
Nice. Yeah. What kind of dog was it? Do you know?
Some big ass doodle of some kind, a burn
Okay.
doodle, I want to say.
Okay. Was it a rescue dog? Is it one of those? It was a
I
rescue
don't know.
dog.
He looks like a fancy dog. He might be a pedigree, you
Okay.
know, purebred dog,
Some sort of doodle.
pure mix of Bernese Mountain Dog and Poodle or Labradoodle.
Bernese
So
mountain
I don't
dogs
I
are pretty dogs.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. What was your dog?
My dog, oh, she was a so I had two, but the main dog, the one dog was I was told a Labrador Retriever, but she was short and stocky, chubby. So she was definitely mixed with something. But she definitely did have lab in her because she loved the water, man. She would swim like an otter, swim around in circles.
Yep. Well,
And yours is what kind of dog is yours again? You
Chihuahua
go.
poodle.
Okay, that's right.
But we only figured that out with the, you know, when we took them on Maury and you know, we had the DNA testing. It was Maury, Maury, Maury. It's like you claim you're 100% poodle, but the lie detector test shows that that was a lie. And the yeah, and yeah, he turned out he was 50% Chihuahua all along. We just thought he was like a miniature poodle.
Oh wow, 50%. Dang. So
Yeah,
how long have you had him?
it's really my fiance's dog and her mother.
Okay.
They had him since before I met her.
Okay.
Um, but not since he was a puppy. He's about 11 years old.
Oh wow.
They had him
Dang.
since he was about 4 or something or 2.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Dang.
yeah,
Huh. That's cool. Do you love him?
yeah,
That's good. That's
yeah.
good. Sometimes it's harder to love other people's dogs. I would be okay if you said no. Yeah.
I think I
So
love every dog.
really, that's good.
Yeah, I think so.
That's good.
Cats too. I don't see the need to choose. I think it's a false
I don't see
dichotomy.
the need to choose. Really? This is where we could debate, probably. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, the thing about a dog is that a dog is very intelligent and very relational.
Mhm.
Um, they make eye contact, meaning they understand language. Some of them have vocabularies
Oh yeah,
here of over hundreds of words.
yeah. My dog, she would try to do that too. Like one time, like she would, if I said a new word, she would do this thing where they turn their head, and she would try to figure out what I was telling her.
Yeah, yeah, and they do process of elimination, like the smart border collies. Like you'll tell them, get me the new word, and they'll go into a room, and if they see something that they haven't seen before, they'll assume that's what you meant and get it.
That's crazy. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean they're very intelligent. What else can you say? I mean, um, yeah, there's some other example I was trying to remember, but
So what about cats? I do like my mom's cat. My mom's cat is great. I've besides that, I've probably had very few good experiences with cats. Most of them have been bad.
well, the
A
thing
cat
about it,
almost killed me, by the way.
the cat doesn't care about you. That's correct.
Uh-huh.
A dog does care. Dog is a member of your family from the moment that you meet it. But a cat really couldn't care less. Cats are actually kind of evil because if you die, they won't really hesitate very long before they eat you.
That's what I've
You know,
heard.
it's like if you die or if you just pretend to be your dead, your dog will freak out. Like if you don't respond to your dog's in this. Dogs are smart. They know what death is, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, they're not they will freak out. They'll become emotionally distressed. Well, a cat, it's
they don't
like
care.
'cause
They'll have a
cats are kind
party.
of like little psychopaths.
They
They
are.
kind of are. They don't really have emotions. I
What they
mean,
do, I will say,
they do have emotions, I mean, just like psychopaths do, but they don't have
yeah,
like
yeah, because
deep
they'll take revenge
emotions.
on you. They will. Like if you take off a cat, it'll go find your clothes and pee on it, just so you got to
hmm
deal with it. Yeah, I've had that happen to me. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there's no two ways about it. Cats truly don't have your well-being in mind.
yeah, yeah.
But that being said, they are quite aesthetic. They do have a certain style. One
Mhm.
has to respect them for their elegance.
That's true. Very true. Yeah, cats and dogs. Got to choose. There is always this weird dichotomy where you got to choose. I don't know
As yeah,
why.
there's cat people and there's dog people,
Yeah,
right?
I'm. Yeah,
Isn't that what they say? Not only in terms of people who prefer dogs and people who prefer cats, but people who are themselves dogs and people who are themselves cats.
do you think
You know what I'm saying?
do you think it's the people that are more the people that act like cats are the ones that prefer dogs?
That's a very interesting question. It's not immediate. The answer is not immediately obvious.
Yeah.
Sometimes people choose the opposite of what they are because like opposites attract. Sometimes people choose the same thing as what they are because they're seeking some kind of uh like external echo um or resonance, sympathetic resonance of like what they themselves are. I don't know.
Hmm.
um yeah, don't really know. I don't really know who chooses which, but you got cat people and dog people, and basically it's the same as with dogs and cats. You can't really trust cat people
Yeah.
because they're too secretive. And
They do.
but
Like witches. Witches are all cat people, right? That was a bad general statement. I realize it now after it
yeah,
came out of my mouth.
you shouldn't generalize that way about witches. That's like not it's not politically correct. Well, isn't it that they say that a witch's familiar spirit is some kind of demon or spirit that follows them, right? And is in some way the complement to their personality, right?
I
Like,
haven't heard this.
didn't you ever read his Dark Materials?
No, I didn't. You know
So,
how unread I am. I
oh
haven't
yeah,
read
that's right.
anything.
It's not Calvin and Hobbes.
Realize who you're
Forgive
talking
me.
to. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not Calvin and Hobbes. The his Dark Materials was a fantasy trilogy authored by Philip Pullman, um, who was uh I don't know, it's an interesting, weird story. It's kind of Gnostic. It's like they kill God in the end, but like the demiurge.
Okay.
Um, because I think he's an atheist author, but he was really into uh Paradise Lost by John Milton. Um, hence the title, because his Dark Materials is a phrase from Paradise Lost. And in that story, everyone has is it called the familiar? It's called a daimon, a demon.
Okay.
Daemon. And that it's very interesting because it's very like Jungian psychosexual animus. Like if you're a man, your daimon is female,
Oh.
unless you're like heterosexual or transgender or something like that, in which case same sex as you. But
Huh.
generally speaking, if a man has a female daimon and vice versa, and the daimon takes the form of an animal when someone is a child, the daimon is capable of freely and fluidly shifting forms. It can be any animal. But around the time of puberty, um, the daimon adopts one settled animal form, which is also expressive of one's personality. Um,
That's really
and
fascinating.
yeah, and the other thing that was interesting about it was how no one is alone because they all can talk to their daimon and their inmost conversation and intimacy and counsel with their
Yeah.
daimon. But you're not supposed to touch somebody else's daimon ever, nor I think are you supposed to speak to it.
Hmm.
Um, so it's very interesting because obviously on some level we all have a daimon, we all have an internal other, but no one can see it. No one can see us taking counsel with it. No one can see what it looks like and what it represents about us. Um, they have to get to know us, I suppose. Um, and it was interesting because there were some creatures in that story that, like, there was the bear. Like, they made his Dark Materials the Golden Compass. They made that into a movie, which sucked.
I haven't
But
seen that, but I've seen the
um,
cover, and I'm like, this looks like a cool movie, but
yeah,
I've
it
never
really
seen it.
sucked.
Oh, okay.
And but there's the talking polar bear in there. At one point in the story, they asked the polar bear, "Doesn't it get lonely? You don't have a daimon because he doesn't have one, or a demon, or whatever you call it." And I call it daimon because it's like Socrates had a daimon, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Socrates would talk to his daimon. Um, he said, "No, I don't get lonely." He said, "Bears don't get cold because bears can't freeze. I don't feel lonely because there's no danger to my being alone." Um, and so that's a kind of interesting story, you know. Um, his Dark Materials, diamonds and stuff. So if a witch has a cat, that's like a familiar spirit, right?
Hmm.
Not really a cat. That's why in Europe they were trying to kill cats because cats is, some witchy bullshit. So they had to kill the cats,
Yeah.
which they never quite connected the dots, I suppose, as to why their rates of plague were so high and their rat infestations were so, you know,
That's the
pestilential.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's
Um,
interesting too. That's weird that like you think of cats a nocturnal creature, right? And most nocturnal creatures seem to kind of feast on the pest, the creeping, crawling things. But people are the same way.
oh yeah, the crawling thing. That's in my freaking official elementary art book.
Okay, yeah.
Dope
Yeah,
as
yeah.
shit.
With that really
What is
grubby
this
poem.
thing? this. Look at you losers. You wish you had this
But
autograph too.
but like but people are like that.
Not
I mean, like
autographed.
in all the a lot of paganism and even I mean certain people are
Creeping thing.
yeah
Here you go.
are out at night. So, but I wonder if like if that is if there is some sort of parallel I don't know what you could say pattern or something where like um uh witches things like that to cut them off completely from I don't want to say society but from existence. Like you know how Jonathan Joe would like kind of say like everything has its space like in its proper space and its proper order
And Saint
and
Augustine said that even monsters are divine creatures, and so too have their place in the providential order of nature.
yeah so
That's dope shit right there.
like even witches like that's one thing I noticed about it like there's like Christians immediately will cut off witches because they're so um I don't know, there's just this like mental block or something. But then if you actually talk to witches, you're
Well,
like,
haven't you
well,
read,
these
"Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live"?
yeah, sorcerer, yeah, witch or sorcerers. But they understand all sorts of herbalism that like is crazy, like that people don't know about, or like
What's
Christian
Jesus
circles
doing
didn't know.
when he spits into the ground
Some sort of
and then
so are you gonna say it's
he
witchcraft?
makes? Why is he using it? Why is he using a mediative? Why is he using mediation of any kind?
Yeah, yeah.
He's God. His word is creative. God the Father said, "Fiat lux," and there was light. Jesus says, "Lazarus out." Lazarus comes out.
Yeah.
So what is he doing when he's using some kind of intermediary substance, using something of the physical world to do like a magic spell?
Yeah, yeah. That's a
Is the
yeah, when I
question.
like I mentioned to you, even the whole are you familiar with the idea of prayer cloth? Have you heard of that before?
Yeah,
Yeah, and it just kinda seems to me
from
like
you.
white like, it's like a weird form of white magic or something. It's like it's this like, Christians do it with a different not intention, because I think the intention is often the same, or it can be the same, as if you're doing it for healing, like, I think a witch could do it for healing as well, but I think that the attention, or whatever you say, or the gaze, the focus, like Luke would talk about, is directed somewhere else. Like, if a Christian is probably directing the attention on the Most High, God, Jesus, things like that. Whereas like other people doing it in a form of other type of magic could do the exact same thing, knit things with intention, but the intention might be different, or the direction of focus might be somewhere else, or it could
Do you
be
think that if a white witch has a pure and selfless intention, that she's connecting to God?
oh man, that's a good question. Um, yeah, I don't know.
A
Um,
pure and selfless and
I
self-giving
would
intention and
I would think
some
so.
spell that she does. I would think so too.
Yeah, yeah, I would think so.
But the question is that your intention? Because generally speaking, here's the thing. Here's the thing. You want to talk to God, it's like you listen for him, and you don't know if it's your own internal chatter or if it's really God. There's a million voices in your mind that if you if you would still your own internal monologue, there are many voices that would rise up to speak in its place. And they say some fairly random and, unpredictable and chaotic things.
Yeah,
It's still a little bit like the monkey mind, or it's some kind of chatter. And you listen for God in that welter and you don't hear anything. God keeps his silence, but it's somehow a truthful silence, more truthful than anything that those voices are saying. You pray, you ask God for mediation, you ask him for an answer. Most of the time, you're not going to hear any kind of voice from heaven. You're not going to receive any kind of obvious answer to your prayers. Um, if you were to go to some other power, that may not be the case. If you were to play with a Ouija board tonight, you may see something for which there is no ready physical explanation. Um, Whereas you may spend years and years of prayer, in prayer to God, and Most Christians don't claim to have seen miracles unless I'm not mistaken.
Mo-
Um, most Christians don't claim to have seen miracles unless
Really?
I'm not,
Okay. Okay.
unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah,
Um,
you're probably right.
could be wrong. But what
Uh,
I'm saying is that there's a way that if you want something to be done right away, immediately, in this supernatural way, God is probably not the person to ask. God is not a vending machine.
yeah.
And the thing is, you don't, because the thing is, it's like, God help you if you should ever get what you think you want, because chances are you don't actually want it. But there are powers out there that will grant you what you think you want as a means to uh, bringing about your destruction, because they're very happy to see it. And so, what I'm saying is that a witch was okay, there's certain things you can pray to God for, certain things you can't. If you hate your neighbor and want them to die, uh, then you can't ask God to do that. You can never, it doesn't matter how close you are with God, it's just never appropriate to ask that.
Yeah.
But there are powers out there that would uh, be more than happy to help you, um, in that request, right? And they don't necessarily have your interest in mind. So I'm saying, like, I think the witch can pray to God however she may conceive it. And in that sense, even is it right to say that she's doing the magic? Because if you pray to God and God does it, God is completely sovereign. You don't direct him anywhere. He directs you to himself. Um, and even in petitionary prayer, it's like if you're able to pray successfully, it's only because he gave you the grace to pray properly, kind of thing. Like, and no one comes to the Father except through the Son, and no one like is brought to the Son except like by the Father. I don't know if it says it in that negative or exclusivist way like that, but there's this way that like uh work out your salvation with fear and trembling, because it's the Lord who worketh in you, um to do I can't remember the rest of it, but um it's like God is the one to whom you pray. He's also the one through whom you pray, and he's also that inside you that directs you to pray. It's just like God is so super ultimate that there's no conceivable sense in which he's ever wielded, right? But dark magic is not like that. And I'm saying just generally, if you're doing magic, it's because you're doing something that it's like what? It's the line from Fantastic Mr. Fox. Like, if what I think is happening, it better not be. It's like
Wait, repeat that one more time. I love this movie, and this is one that's cool.
if you're doing black magic, so probably shouldn't. It's probably not good for you. It's probably not anything God wants you to do. See what I'm saying? No one has any business doing that. But still, conceivably, like a white witch can can work her her will on the spiritual dimension. I think what Chris Langan would call the telic dimension.
Is Here's a
That,
question: Is every witch? Because you've heard, I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with this theory that even when people are doing evil, they ultimately are trying to do good because they think
yeah.
like, yeah. So then,
Well,
wouldn't
they're seeking
every
some good.
yeah? So wouldn't every black witch, dark witch, technically be a white witch to themselves?
No, no. I mean, well, maybe to themselves,
To
but
themselves.
the thing is that whatever you do is for some good, but some goods are better than others.
Yeah.
So the lowest good is just yourself. You're seeking just yourself. That's still a good, but it's the lowest good. The highest good is good of
Mhm.
God. Was love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. To love your neighbor as yourself. Um, that's the highest good. because
Mhm.
it's you're there somewhere represented, in that equation, but you're just a very small part of it. But yeah, everybody who does anything is doing it because they're pursuing some good. And in the limit, God is the good. He's the implicit end of every purposive or rational action, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so anyway, but like, yeah, I mean, witchcraft, I don't know. I mean, like some people, there might be some way, like, for example, the ancestor worship or like the whatever whatever it is that those pre-Christian societies did, not all of it is obviously wrong as far as I can see. Especially not with like or the light that they were given.
Mhm.
I imagine some of it was good and some of it was not good. Um, so is a witch doing like it's conceivable to me that like I don't know, there's like you said, like there's neutral spirits.
Mhm.
It may be that a witch is, I don't know, like conferring with like neutral spirits or something, or but see the problem is again, God has there be some kind of silence. Whoever is willing to break that silence is probably not worshiping God. Um, see what
I
I'm
kind of,
saying?
I think I kind of see what you're saying. Like, as in break the silence, as in speaking of their own sort of thing, or because then it kind of like if you have a spirit that is neutral, if all of a sudden they start speaking, they're kind of wanting attention from someone else, and so they're kind of wanting glory in a way. They're wanting, uh, they're drawing focus away from God. Is that kind of what you mean into themselves, or no? Or am I getting off base here?
If some atheist on the street says God sucks, I hate God, God is stupid, God doesn't exist. What does
Yeah,
God doesn't do anything? Um, Sometimes you pray to God with everything that you have, and it doesn't seem like you receive an answer.
yeah.
Um,
But I don't think everything that breaks that silence would be bad though, because some people have like we'll see angelic beings, we'll see like miracles in those times. Like sometimes he does answer, I think. Um, wouldn't you agree or no?
he does
Okay.
sometimes,
Yeah.
so it makes it confusing.
But
But
I get what you're saying though. If you call out to something and something answers, it's like you don't necessarily know what that could
well,
be.
there was a dude who had a near-death experience of hell. He was like power, like his the higher ups at his job were cracking down on him because they realized that for a long time he hadn't been doing any work, and he had been like the music director at his church, but he had been seeing prostitutes regularly on the side, and so he'd been kind of living a double life. And when everything was being found out about it, he went on this drive, and he was just panicking and just driving. He didn't know where. He heard a voice say, "It's me. I'm God. Take your hands off the steering wheel, and I will direct you safely to where you're going. I'll drive for you." So he did, and he got into just like this horrific accident. Isn't it written, "You shall not test the Lord your God"?
Mhm.
God doesn't somehow work like that.
Yeah.
There's a way that he works, and there's a way that he doesn't work. Um, Something else. Well, I'm just getting a little distracted. I might have to help Benjamin in a second, but
You all right? Your eyes got real big. You okay?
yeah, I'm just like a very reactive person.
Yeah. I didn't know if you heard something
Um,
or not.
no, what was I going to say?
Well, you just said there's a way God works and a way he doesn't work. Yeah, I think you're right. It's interesting. I had a friend, I'm not gonna mention his name, but I think he had a very similar experience. Because the weird thing is stuff like that'll happen, and I don't think it's God directed, but it's strange how he can work it to his good. Because I had a friend basically did almost the exact same thing. I think he was really in a bad place, and he just kind of crashed his car on purpose. I don't think he heard a voice of God telling him to. I think he just was like, "Let's just do the Fight Club thing and go hit the put the pedal, take our hands off the wheel." I think I found that out later. At first, I just heard he was in a really bad car wreck, but in the car wreck, he said this was before the fire truck even got like, fire department even got there, and he said a guy showed up in his truck in his car with him, and he thought it was a fireman because he said it just looked like a person, and the guy just said, like, "Everything's gonna be okay," like, basically just consoled him and said, "You're gonna be fine," and everything, uh, and then later he told me he thought he didn't know what it could have been besides an angel because he was like, there was they had nobody had gotten there yet, and then when they got there, I think there was some weird like, there was I can't remember what happened. The way the story even lined it up when they reported it in the news, he said it was really strange, and so it's like
Well, I wonder whether there aren't angels on our cases and whether they don't petition God to help us in various ways that it occurs to them to help us, but
yeah,
they have to they can only help us in the ways that God allows them to. Um, I wonder that. And I also wonder whether, see, I mean, there's in Christian theology, there's definitely an unwillingness to say that angels are um, the souls of departed ancestors, but
that's a fun theory.
certainly, but certainly in sort of your pre-Christian societies, that's the way the ancestors are regarded.
That's what I would think because I would think the Bible even says that, but I could and here's why,
Where does the
because
Bible say that?
okay, this is Um, and I don't know if it's just talking about the eschaton, so I could be wrong, but Jesus even says, like, concerning the resurrection, like, when they're asking about the woman who has, like, 5 husbands, they all die and stuff, and so they're like, "In the resurrection, whose husband?" And then he says,
Yeah.
"But in the resurrection, they shall neither marry nor be given in marriage, but shall be like angels in heaven." Um, so in the resurrection, if you have saints who have died and gone to be
Shall
with
be like
Christ
angels.
now. Sorry, you there? I think it froze
Yeah.
up for a second. So in the resurrection, like if you or even just now, if you die and go to be with Christ like Christians believe, then why wouldn't you be acting in some sort of angelic mediating type fashion? Where I would think it would like this I personally believe that and I would
So
that's what
we still believe the saints mediate for us.
yeah, and I would believe that's why I'm not too I don't kick very hard when Catholics pray to saints because I'm like it seems like I don't know that it's right. I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but to me it's like if you
Well,
uh
of the saints and Mary, I think George MacDonald wrote, "Why should my love be powerless to help another?"
yeah.
Which
Mm.
is kind of a what are you an absolute heretic or Christian if uh you ask George MacDonald's spirit to intercede for you?
Yeah, which is I mean, but, like, if you were that's what I mean, if you were I don't wanna say humble enough, if you were watching enough, like, you would probably see it happen. Like, honestly, if you asked that, you would probably I'm at the point now where I think you would see it happen if you were watching. It just probably
See
would
what
look
happened.
like, if I were to pray to George MacDonald to intercede, um,
Don't pray.
like,
Don't pray
pray
to anyone except
no, no, no,
God.
no, but I'm saying, like, if you were to ask, um, there's a way that he's gosh, I don't even wanna say reincarnating, but, like, the way everybody like, people talk about him more now than they ever did before. Like, there's a way George MacDonald seemed to be dead for, like, 100 years or for a long time because people always knew about C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. No one really talked about George MacDonald, but now his name's starting to be stirred up again. Like his it's not like there's his ghost walking around, but there's this weird especially in these circles online, there's this weird George MacDonald spirit where people can quote him and we all know who we're talking about.
Well, the thing about it also is that pray on some level, all it does mean is ask, petition.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
So here's another here's another part in the Bible that and this is just weird things where like I see these verses and it makes that's what makes me think about these things. I don't know which one it is. I'm probably not gonna find it now. I think it's in John. But the Greeks come. Okay, yeah. So now there's certain Greeks among those who came to worship at the feast. Then they came to Philip, who was with. Oh wait. So then they asked Philip, "Sir, we wish to see Jesus." Philip then told Andrew, and in turn, Andrew and Philip told Jesus. So it's like this. You know what I mean? I kind of feel like that's what Catholics are doing. They're like, "Well, I'm going to pray to James, and then James will go talk to Mary, and then Mary will go talk to Jesus, and it will go up the chain." And I'm like, according to what I've always been taught in Christianity, that's kind of redundant and you should just pray straight to God. But
Yeah, there's a weird way that Jesus becomes kind of as distant and unapproachable as the Father himself,
yeah,
where Jesus was first needed as a mediator between humankind and that distant Father.
and now we need
And so that's
mediator
why
upon
they
mediator.
Mary as the mediator between humankind and Jesus, which is kind of like, is that too many mediators? But
Yeah. Yeah.
there is a way that Jesus does become, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ to my left, Christ to my right.
Hmm.
He's no longer localized. He's no longer the particular. He's disappearing up into the formless omnipresence of of Yahweh, of Yahweh Gadol. So, like in the Binitarian Jewish thought, there's Yahweh Katan and Yahweh Gadol. It's the little Yahweh and the big Yahweh. Um, there's a weird kind of, what would you even call it? Something Jungian. Enantiodromia, maybe, but there's some weird dynamic where Jesus is.
Oh no, it froze. Shoot. Kyle, are you there? Did I lose you? I think I lost service. Hold on. I'm gonna try to go inside. Recording. So, all right. Cal's helping with Benjamin right now, so he's taking an intermission. So it's a good time to
Cool.
join. But yeah, did you get my text or?
Did.
Okay, yeah, I was trying to catch you up. That's basically where it's been going. So, you got any thoughts on
This
that?
is helpful.
Mediating, where we left off, we were just talking about mediating and praying to saints and whether that's good or bad because you're kind of, which I don't know if that's how the Catholics do it. Like, I think some of it might just be honoring and reverencing the saints, but I've heard, this is from my mother who previously was Catholic, that or grew up in Catholicism, said that they actually pray to saints, and so it's kind of like if Jesus was supposed to be the mediator that brought you back to God, now you're kind of adding in a bunch of more mediators. So it's like, is that even right to do?
Mm,
Like, I'll pray to James, who will talk to Mary, who will talk to Jesus for me, who will talk to God, sort of thing.
yes. What's your impression of the spread of different opinions on that? Hi, Cal.
I'm not.
I think they're all heretical, all of them.
What was your comment on my YouTube video? Shia's Catholic, not Christian, or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I stand by that.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on it, Craig, with the mediators?
It's a subject. It's a subject. I'm not sure I have an interesting answer. Partly because that's not the angle that I typically approach these things from, but it's an interesting idea, and I hesitate to say anything because I suspect you both know much more than I do,
Well,
No,
or have a
we're
more
more willing to
sophisticated.
speculate on stuff we don't know.
my mind, I think when I start thinking about these things, my mind starts to sound sort of in a probably unhelpful way apply this pattern onto it that I think spreads across different categories to where I usually find myself getting in trouble in these conversations because I'm like, well, if I can't, because if I'm thinking of prayer as in forms of like asking to receive something from, I'm like, and I'm supposed to only direct that to God. If my mind wants to be very black and white, then I'm like, then I need to cut out all things. Like, if I go to, if I have a headache, if I want to go get an ibuprofen, I'm like, am I not praying to Big Pharma in a way or something? Like, am I not, shouldn't I just direct my prayer to God and just wait for him to heal me of the headache or for it to go away? And I'm like, I
Well,
don't think that's
they
right
say that.
because I think God works through people to bring about those things. So I'm like, I don't
Operare est orare. To work is to pray. Work is prayer.
work is prayer. Huh.
Yeah.
So when
God uses means,
I'd be
including the
interested,
means of his son and Mary.
Mm.
because I'd be interested to hear your guys' thoughts on that, because I understand God works through people. So like God will work through someone to bring out a new cure. Like if someone cured cancer, we'd think, oh, that's probably God helps her cancer, and so, or like all these other things that God works through. But then you get even into like, if you go to, what if you went to like, you were sick and you went to like some sort of healer, like Native American healer who like prays over you in a different way. Is that bad to do that? Is that,
Mm.
or if you went to like an herbalist and the lady working there was a witch, but you just went there for the herbs to get better, and like can God work through that witch like we're talking about to cure you? Like there's all these different things where I'm like, when do you
Are
when
you allowed to eat food sacrificed to idols?
exactly, right? But then what are you doing if you are taking ibuprofen?
Mm.
Like that's what I mean. Are
Not
you
trusting in God to rebuke that headache all on his own.
This is how the cat almost got me killed, Cal.
Really?
There's a
Yeah, so
question
yeah.
I could ask, maybe eh, that would bring us more into the realm where I'm comfortable speculating, and I would imagine you two might be as well. But there's there's a motif in the tradition of the garments of skin, and you have this vision of uh, technology as additional garments of protection that you need if you're going to be further from the tree of life or further down the hierarchy of uh, paradise, let's say. Uh, so that's my impression is that the connotation is typically negative with garments of skin, or especially when they're taken, let's say, undeservedly. I wonder if that is a metaphor or an idiom that is in your vocabulary, or how you think about the positive aspect of the garments of skin, because it seems related to the question of using technology to solve our problems. You can tell me also. I think that's a silly
No, I'm
question.
I'm I'm familiar with that. I'm the I don't know. I'm not sure what to think about it. I like how you said, the further you get away from the the tree of life, you kind of need to add more. Because they're banished from the garden, right? So that's the story. So, um, but then it just kind of then sometimes I think you maybe run into problems with, like, you could have people saying, "Well, God didn't heal me because I'm not as close to God as this other person," or something like that. But the thing that doesn't I could see how that could bother some people, but the reason I don't think that bothers me is because of the way I'm like, I think you're closest to God when you first come to him, like when you're the biggest sinner type thing. Like you see people that when they first repent and they are at rock bottom. Like you see people at rock bottom can be the closest to God in that moment when they are like really hitting that
Uh,
point. So it's like as far as you are from God, you could still be as close to him, because he's like, you make your bed in hell and behold, I'm there
well, I'll riff on that minorly. It seems the reason that might be, if that's true, is because they're uncovered, because they're totally naked.
in that moment. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, the Pharisee guy prays thanks for uh, not making me like this tax collector, which is not even really a prayer when you think about it. But so it's like when you're first like I don't know, knocked on your ass by life and you turn to God for the first time, it's like maybe you have like the lowest opinion of yourself. But later on, it's just like, yeah, I'm pretty awesome, like I'm definitely really spiritual. I definitely have a really, deep prayer life. I've got God figured out. I've got the Bible figured out. Theologically, like my takes are the best. So why wouldn't, you know, um, God God do everything for me and so on? I don't know.
Yeah, this is a really tricky predicament, and it reminds me of. Uh, I'm gonna at Mitchell Caps right now. We had a conversation about having conviction about a subject. You know, eventually, unless you just want to swim in uncertainty, you have to kind of commit to your convictions in some way. Uh, and it seems like an open question as to how to do that in a way that's healthy, you know, that leads you not to a place where you're so sure of yourself that you're far from God in the respect that you two just described. I don't have a good answer. I tend to not commit, and I tend to hold conviction extremely loosely. And I think that's probably largely because of my temperament.
What is your temperament? Is it high openness, low conscientiousness?
Well, conscientiousness, I'm less sure about. Uh, I am in, I, I'm trying to recall my big five test, but extremely open, 98th percentile, something silly like that. And mid-level disagreeableness. But
I'm not sure
the openness is
disagreeability
what it,
would have much to do with it, but conscientiousness, I think, is the one that, I was trying to school Jason, how lamentably narrow is his reading. I was trying to school him on the Big Five personality model as well as the lexical hypothesis on which it's based. Um, that five-factor model, they were all supposed to be independent factors, but it I'm not so sure how independent openness and conscientiousness actually are. But it's not like I'm a real like personality theoretician.
hmm. How would somebody make the case that they're not independent?
It's because if they're negatively related, they're not independent. So one has to indicate that they're actually negatively related. I mean, certainly they seem to predict like alignment on opposite ends of the political spectrum to the extent that that is actually well conceived as one statistical unified construct that has like um, that it has a kind of stability as a construct. Um, you know, uh, then that would be some kind of prima facie evidence that openness and conscientiousness are not independent because they're negatively related. That is to say, like if our political spectrum of left and right has some kind of external validity to it, then openness and conscientiousness, to the extent that they seem to be driving people to opposite ends of that distribution, it's like, how independent are they really? And moreover, when you think about like the lexical hypothesis on which the Big Five personality model is based, what assurance is there in that methodology that all your constructs would be perfectly independent of each other? I see no a priori necessity that they would be independent.
It sounds
Um,
it. I just want to make sure I'm understanding you. It sounds like you're saying because of the research about political alignment, it seems more like you have openness, which is a slider that you can slide up and down, and you have conscientiousness, and as you tweak one, the other goes in the opposite direction.
at least that is true. That dynamic is true with respect to certain aspects of each. And it may be that those aspects are not even aspects that any um, theorist has delineated at this time. where, because they have the Big Five model is conceived, the factors are conceived as breaking down into aspects, but who says that we've actually subdivided them properly? It may be that they do decompose into aspects, but the aspects into which they decompose are not anything that anybody has figured out yet. Like in terms of seeing um how how the pieces of the puzzle really fit together.
This is related to what we're talking about in a different sense, because um, when we talk about personality models, it seems like for the most part we agree that they're provisional. They're not. They're a model, and I bring that up because we were talking about uh, being dogmatic about a model versus not committing to a model at all. I'm curious for each of you, how do you, if you kind of evaluate yourself, do you find yourself as um, more prone to being dogmatic, overly dogmatic, or more prone to being undercommittal?
Basically, I'm really smart, so all my models are like smart as heck, and I'm just like basically have everything figured out. So,
So you can be extremely dogmatic about them.
I mean, I'm not dogmatic, I'm just right. So,
I don't know.
I want
I
to
don't know
know.
what my
I want to know.
answer is.
I want to hear your answer, Jason, and then I want to hear Cal's real answer.
Oh yeah. I don't know. It's weird. I feel
I
like
am
if I
high openness, low conscientiousness. I'm really loose.
so this is I low conscientiousness kind of like the opposite of openness is what the way they use that term. I'm guessing, or no?
No, it's the way that I use it, but I'm not an expert. Jordan Peterson
Okay.
would say it's uncorrelated and that he himself is high in both.
Okay. Huh. Yeah, yeah. Well, he kind of comes across that way a lot of times, actually. But I don't know. I don't know what I am. I think I used to be more dogmatic about things, but then when it comes to personality stuff, I think I don't know. It's hard to say because I think if someone I think there's ways people could kind of pin down my personality and stuff, but then there's sometimes where I'll do things in spite of myself because I've done that plenty of times where like I'll just um especially when it comes to selfishness or something.
That's just high openness though. That's like what Jordan Peterson was saying was like these people, and I think they tend disproportionately to be women rather than men. And again, that would argue for like this idea that the constructs are not as independent of the things that they're supposed to be independent of as they're held to be or alleged to be. Like women are showing that, well, there are sex differences on the factors. I think that much they're not that huge, but like people who they in the extreme you would call it dissociative identity disorder. But people who their personality is unpredictable, or like you catch them on one day, it's like they're a different person than they are on another day, even extending to how they talk and how they express themselves and like their mannerisms and everything. And the high trade openness is associated with that. Um, so it's like for people who are just like have extremely complex, unpredictable personalities who almost have to act some different way despite themselves, like that is openness, and that is a little bit of like what Jung called an antiodromia, where things become their opposites. It's like a person who's very high in openness, it's like if they're a Calvinist, then they have to become the opposite of a Calvinist. Because that's the kind of dialectical nature of reality itself. Is trying to kind of like express like the fullness of the infinite that it is.
I
That's
didn't follow you
interesting.
there.
Yeah, I know it's not an obvious inference. So you
You
have to.
I mean, I
Say,
understand where I think that's high openness. I think I'm following because I think I would do that in a way where I wouldn't become a Calvinist necessarily, but I would try to at least think that way in order to understand that perspective, you know? Does that make sense? So in
You
a
can
way that
probably understand.
it's being open because you're opening yourself to that idea, but in order to do it honestly, you kind of almost have to become a Calvinist. Like you have to take that approach. Like in order, does that make sense? Like you're not really
Good
you're
case in point. The basic dichotomy. Calvinism is a good example. The basic dichotomy is you have freedom and constraint. You have this and then not this. And Calvinist is the high constraint, i.e., high conscientiousness, and the not Calvinist is the high openness, i.e., high freedom. It's like Sherry Suter said: if you go too far to the right, you cease to love your neighbor. Go straight too far to the left, you cease to love God. The Pharisees create burdens for others that they themselves do not bear. The Sadducees deny the resurrection. The conservative Republicans believe in God, but they don't do enough to help their fellow Americans. The poorest, they don't visit those in prison. They think it's about, getting a house that's, and making six figures and so on. The the lefty people, they understand the sort of kind of anarchic, um, quasi-socialism of the gospel, but they don't acknowledge God at all.
I think that
So
I
you
think
you got
yeah. Go
oh,
ahead.
I was gonna say, but people like Jason can understand the Calvinists better than the Calvinists can understand people like Jason, because Jason is like high openness. Um, and again, that whole openness, conscientiousness business, how independent are they really? I don't know. I don't really
Mhm.
know. Unless I'm just using conscientiousness differently than I was actually using the literature. But then the question is, if you want real predictive power, maybe you should use it different. But anyway,
Mhm.
That's what I was going. I was really just fishing for that
Yeah.
compliment. So thank you. No, no, but no, but I was just.
You know,
I think there is something to that, though. Sorry, what I was gonna say when I was gonna interject. I thought the build the wall symbolism was perfect example of that because you have right set like the right side, the conservative. That's like one of the mantras that was going on was build the wall, and so but which is
boundaries.
necessary. Yeah, it's good to have boundaries and to have order to things. But then it's
yeah,
like there's
that's
this wall of compassion that's almost broken off to the outside world. But then the people that want to tear it down, the conservatives see it as a flood, and it's like now there's no more constraints, and so you
yeah.
have
Well,
both
that's
sides.
and the conservatives. They pride themselves on how well they follow Jesus, and we all know that Jesus, he loved building walls between, you know, the Jews and the Samaritans. He he just he loved um he loved individualism. He loved the profit motive. Um
But I mean,
he
there
you
even
know
in the Bible, I think there exists that weird play between both because then you get into, um, I mean, what was the New Jerusalem? It's like outside or this and that and this and that, and so it's like
Mhm.
there is a inside and outside weird sort of play like you're talking about, where it's like there is um a kind of a both, which kind of gets back to what we were at the very beginning talking about it with
Which,
even
like,
like which
Revelation, is
is
there like a less Christian book than that? Like, real talk,
then
like
what?
Revelation.
Oh, Revelation. Okay.
Yeah, it's like Jesus comes back, but this time he's kicking ass.
Well, I no, I
He
think it's
could have
actually,
called
I think
down
it's perfect. I think it's perfect.
he
Can you
could
say
have
more?
called down legions of angels when he
Say
was
more,
kicking
Craig.
ass, but he didn't feel like it for some reason, except now he does.
Well, he is. I mean, it's a natural extension of the. I can't say anything serious after you said that.
No, 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 no. Keep going, Craig. I want to hear more. You said I think it's perfect.
Well, it's a natural extension of the, the story of Moses ascending the mountain. He ascends and then he returns with judgment, with the law. You know, and it's comparable. I tend to really like God's dark side, and I think in there's to the degree that you don't think that Jesus has a dark side, or that wrath is a fundamental aspect of his personality. It seems unchristian.
I just
Well,
picture him coming back as
the
Darth
thing about
Vader.
it is, he's the father of lights. God is the father of lights, in whom there is no
Turning.
Cool.
in whom there is no
Shadow turning.
yeah, well, yeah, does it okay. So in whom there is no variableness
That's it. Okay.
or any shadow of turning.
Yeah.
What's the other one where it says God is light, in him there is no darkness? Which one is that? There's none.
No, that is a verse. I don't know where it is, but yeah. It's probably in John. John's writing confused me so much because he's very black and white.
Well, in the Old Testament, it's like I the Lord, I do good, I do evil. Has
Yeah.
destruction come to a city and I didn't sanction it? I didn't will it, or I didn't purpose it, whatever. But in
Yeah.
the New Testament, it's different. It's a different message. What does that mean? Not
Well,
sure. I think I know.
well,
But
let's hear it. Let's hear it then. If you think
no,
you
no,
know.
I like you. I would just develop some theology of a right hand and a left, and the left hand is permissive, but God is not willing that any should perish. But in the older vision of God, it's just God is whatever happens. Like there's the trial by ordeal, or two kingdoms will go to war. God is in some sense the outcome of the battle. Whoever wins has the rules by the right of God. Might makes
Yes.
right. So that's the older vision of God. In the Old Testament is like, if you don't do this, God is going to kick your ass. And if something
Well,
gets kicking your ass, it's because you pissed off God. And in the New
yeah,
Testament, it's
keep going.
like a different conception.
Are you in a
It's
hotel? This looks fancy.
no. This
Oh,
is my dad's house in Colorado.
baller lifestyle here in my
Eh.
garage. This
You're in my
Cavalier
garage.
Lamborghini.
So seriously,
Let's hear it, Craig. Break it down.
well, you could say that God is what happens in the sense that you just described. He's whatever happens, but it's the surprising miracle of the matter is that what happens seems to be intelligible, and it seems to be, um, let's say, benevolent more than it's malevolent, which it didn't have to be.
See, here's the thing that I get into, that this might be related. I don't know. Is I don't see those things as darkness, and I don't see those things as like I know God says, I don't know, some translations probably say I do good, I do evil. I don't know if mine necessarily says that, but I don't necessarily see those things as evil. Like when he destroys a city, uh it it can be argued that it's evil, but it's like, but you could easily argue that it's good if you're looking at the whole story of humanity. Like the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, it's like you could easily, very, very easily argue that's good if you follow the biblical narrative, because you could almost, to me, you could argue that it's almost an honor that they got that, because it's like, because God, like what's the worst scenario? God let them go about in their own, just keep doing what they're doing. It's like, no, God chastens whom he loves. Like it's like, and then he destroyed them. And not only that, now they stand as a signpost, not only throughout the rest of the biblical story, but throughout all history. Like everybody can reference them and understand that like this is a signpost now for humanity. Don't go this way. And then God looks on them from the New Testament and says, if I would have went to them and revealed myself to them the way that I revealed myself to you, they would have repented. So now you have justified them. So now they're almost placed in this higher seat of, because the judgment's based on ignorance. So it's like, was that evil in the end? Because in the overall aspect of humanity, you could argue it's good, but then when you get into a real personal level, it sure looks like evil. Does that
All
make
right,
sense? Like
cats,
if,
I gotta leave.
no, don't
But
take off. All right.
sorry, I gotta go. I'm just falling asleep over here. I'm dying.
Wait,
But I
Luke's just
wanna
hopping on though.
I wanna concede a point to Craig before I go. Craig, Revelation is a symbolic book, right? And so like whoa,
Luke.
what's up, dog? This dude is intense. This dude looks like
I
he
know.
just finished robbing a convenience store or something. This
Yeah.
guy's dangerous person, dangerous heretic.
What did I?
Um,
What did I break in the middle of?
I don't even know. I'm falling asleep. I have to go right now. Like really, like.
He was just leaving. We were talking about
But but
But
you can chat with Jason and Craig.
but you got to finish because you were in the middle of telling me that I was right.
Yeah, you were right. Like in other words, Revelation is symbolic. So Jesus is ruling with a sword in Revelation, but it's not like a literal sword, but it represents something, right? And uh there must be a symbolic level on which, when Jesus returns, it is, you know, there's gonna be the aspect of him like ruling through force or in some way that was not true previously, even if it's not like this obvious violent coercive force. So I don't
Hmm.
know.
Force, but not coercive force.
Yeah, right. I don't know, man. I'm reaching. I'm trying to make some argument why Revelation isn't unchristian, but like it really obviously, I mean, it's not obviously Christian.
Take it out of the canon. Get it out of here.
Yeah, I mean, no, but it's just like what is like I found this paper on the internet that was like how like unchristian Revelation is, and after I read it, I was like, yeah, this is exactly correct. It's like, and you can't unsee it once you see it. But
Well, what's the main topic of discussion in tonight's Zoom chat?
oh, it's
it was a
bounced
lot of
all
stuff.
over
It was
already. Yeah.
witchcraft, and then it was like the big five personality model. And then it was talking about the right and the left hand of God. And now I gotta duck out. I gotta go.
Because
We'll
Cal
catch
dropped
you cats
this. He
later.
dropped this comment about. All right, see you, Cal. Have a good
Okay,
night, man.
bye, cats and burgers.
Okay.
He dropped a comment about Revelation being an unchristian book in the Bible, and then Craig mentioned how he's like, I gotta admit, I kind of like God's dark side, and the meaning you like the in Revelation when he comes with the sword. As Cal said, he comes back and he's just kind of kicking ass and stuff. So and then
Well, I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious for your thoughts on this. I want to say first, I'm Craig. I don't know if we've met each other.
Craig, nice to meet you. I have seen at least one full episode talk of yours with Jason, and probably more than that. I mean, probably portions of two or three, I suppose. My name is Luke, and I am a random internet person.
he
I
just robbed a convenience store.
I resemble that. I resemble that description too. So I'd love to hear
Nice.
that.
Okay.
There's a point I'm curious for your guys' opinion about. There's We talk in this circle often about Carl Jung, who was on the tracks of Nietzsche, who thought that he didn't like that Christians had inverted the classical values, where strength wasn't a value, and that Jung kind of was addressing this and thought that we didn't we had a big problem to the extent that Christianity and that tradition didn't embrace God's dark side or his shadow aspect. Let's say, I wonder just what your reaction to that is, and if you consider that a problem, or if it's something that you guys have spent time with.
Well, I guess my immediate response to that would be that I think many forms of, uh, for lack of a better word, institutional Christianity have probably rejected God's dark side, and I think have been a little, they've probably been a little simplistic in their understandings and systems and ways of understanding God because of I think intrinsically within any institution there has to be a baked in conservative element to the
Mm.
system of what an institution is, because that's what an institution is you're trying to you're trying to promulgate a particular thing into the future, but but by that very nature, it has to be conservative.
Yeah.
Because there's a certain side of it. What it makes me think of is this is what made me realize that I'm temperamentally. I mean, I've known this for a while, but it doubly confirmed it that I'm very temperamentally liberal. Is that Jonathan Peugeot had this. Well, he didn't talk much, but Jordan Peterson had this conversation with Greg Heuritz, who I've spoken with Jason a little about this. I think we've talked about this, right?
Yeah, I watched that video. It's
And
really good.
yeah, and Jonathan Peugeot, one of the few times that he talks during the video, is he says that the they're talking about horror movies because they're kind of diagnosing in a kind of Jungian way this dream that Greg Heuritz had about Jordan Peterson, and he was saying like they were at this party and all of a sudden like it was becoming very kind of weird and insular and almost I think he said like horror movie-ish kind of hillbilly kind of horror movie hillbilly murdery and he was just not feeling the party and needed to get out of there and Jonathan Peugeot just kind of brought up how no that makes a lot of sense because symbolically the kind of monster or demon of someone with a conservative temperament is like a chimera, is a shape shifting thing that's uneasy to categorize. Like that's what conservatives don't like is something that they can't understand, a chaotic dark element. Let's just say, right? And the liberal temperament, their monster is like an insular kind of hillbilly closed off totalitarian colonizing replicant thing and I was like that's a really good insight because temperamentally for sure and this has been my religious experience is that's the thing that I'm afraid of. I've never been afraid of the kind of weird looking shape shifting thing I don't understand. Like that doesn't bother me at all. I'm just like, cool, let's roll. Like I don't understand what it is. Great. I don't understand what anything is, you know.
Mm.
But like the kind of closed off, the thing that wants to because Jordan Peterson has talked about this, the thing that wants to close you off to the transcendent, which is the only thing that can error correct you. Like that's the thing that terrifies me. And that's kind of the and institutions I think default to doing that because they're just trying to continue something which is already at least in their frame understood to some regard. And so like the any part of the Bible that's weird, like we've been talking about Luke, the unjust or the unrighteous manager recently, Luke 16, or any of the verses that don't make sense in the Bible. Jason loves to talk about those and bring those out because he's such a Bible thumper, which I love. And I'm just like, those are the ones that like I always love those texts because they just break people's categories. And for
Mm.
me, I'm just like, fantastic. Like
Yeah.
that's what we need. But that's because I'm a liberal, you
Mm.
know?
I like everything you just said.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
it was good. I loved how Peugeot brought that up too, and it was like the monster of the left is the hillbilly because it's the
yeah.
it's a dumb inbred. Like, and
Yeah.
that's symbolically that sounds offensive, but that's the perfect way to describe it because you get stuck in your own little circle and it just keeps shrinking
Yeah.
and shrinking and shrinking until you can't see
Mm.
anything else, and you're just stupid to your own words. Mitch is joining now. This is a fun conversation tonight. This will hopefully won't Mitch won't ask you a really awkward question again, Luke. That was a
What?
do you
What did he
remember?
ask me last?
Okay. All right, I'm gonna bring this up real quick as soon as he gets in here. Because if I
Maybe
think the
my
first
wife will show up and then
the
I'll
first
disappear.
okay, the first thing I think Mitch ever said to you was he was like, Mitch, are you here? Do you remember the first question you ever asked Luke?
What his thoughts were on the Bible.
Yep. See, it's that like very important question. The first question Mitch ever asked me was, "Have you ever been in love?" And I was like, "Who is this guy? What's going on here?" Yeah. So
Well, I want to, Mitch. It's great to see you.
You
We
too.
were just talking. We were talking about the idea that the left or people who are open, this is what Luke was telling us, that their monster or their demon that they're afraid of is something like a shape-shifting chimera that is kind of formless and
The conservative is scared of that. Yeah.
right. My bad. I said
Yeah.
it the opposite way, but you're correct.
Yeah.
But the open temperamented person, their monster is a hillbilly that is, antiquated and bigoted.
Very closed off from the outside world, and so it's just continually like this inbreeding, and so that leaves you with the dumb hillbilly.
Fearful of what it doesn't know.
So something Mitch and I have definitely talked about before, that I don't feel like we ever came to a good conclusion on, but I think it's a really interesting open question. Is it seems like the Christian tradition tends towards being perceived as the hillbilly rather than the shape-shifting chimera, even though it lends itself to very politically liberal ideas. But it seems like I wonder if your thoughts on this. It seems like a lot of Christian people I know, for good reason, seem to be committed to the idea that the stuff that's in the Bible is the stuff that's going to be there. Like, this is the truth. It's not going to get updated, and perhaps even there's not even the interpretation of it isn't really up for adaptation, let's say, or for revision. Like, it's as if there's kind of a canonical interpretation, and that's the one that we should all be trying to discover. But that I wonder if you guys see it that way, and if my impression is that maybe that leads to a situation where Christianity is kind of anchored more towards the hillbilly, let's say, character than the chimeric character. What are your thoughts on that?
This is a really interesting question. When it comes to the canon, and you're bringing the idea of scripture into it.
Well, I think, sorry, Mitch, you have thoughts? Go ahead.
Keep you first.
Okay. Well, I had a conversation with Joey, the old leader of the Bridges of Meaning Discord, about something that I think is similar to that, but and I think this is tied into like American politics, but even American Christianity, is I would say the air quote liberal and conservative side, I think, are both temperamentally very conservative in the way that we're talking about. Like, I wouldn't even categorize the liberal side as being truly liberal, because they're really they're like a shapeshifter. Their idea of a chimera or shapeshifter is the new monolith that they want everything to be. And so they're not really open to something they don't understand. They just want everything to be. I've often said that they're just conservatives with different values. It's not what's considered traditionally morally conservative values, but they have their own new set of values, which would be, this is the common critique, which they'll say, like, diversity and inclusion and all that stuff. But if you have a different kind of diversity and inclusion than I have, well, then you're out. Well, that's not true diversity and inclusion. That's not true liberalism. That's just conservatism under a different name. That's the Antichrist of Christ.
This is it. I think that's a really good point, and related to, I think it's exactly the same point that a lot of people who are temperamentally liberal, very high openness type of people who value new ideas, value, they're like xenophilic, they love other cultures, are feeling kind of politically homeless in this period of time, because I think you're totally right that there's kind of two types of the both sides of the
Warring
mainstream
conservatives.
Yeah, it's weird.
But I think it's the same. But I think it's the same often in theological and biblical conversations. It's really just a waging of war of who has the proper interpretation and who is. I often call it the exclusivist religion of the right side of history. It's just like everybody thinks that they are on the right side of history or the right side of interpretation, and it's exclusive. And if you disagree with me, you're out. Well, that's the modern kind of insular hillbilly that I'm afraid of. Is I don't care what your opinion is, but the one where you're opposed and you exclude anyone who disagrees with you.
It's kind of interesting because at some point, right, you have to you do have to draw lines, and this is sort of the crossfire that I'm stuck in. Isn't there wisdom in drawing lines for yourself instead of always being in this kind of nebulous stretch of I don't know, or you can't really know, or no one ever knows. It's hard to get on with your life if you're in that place, and so you sort of select a foundation for yourself and build up from it. And swapping out that foundation is just an enormous, and the consequences of it are huge. And sometimes you may have to do that, but it shouldn't be something that happens often or all the time. Once you find the hill that you're ready to die on, you usually end up dying there.
But like, what do you? So like, when you say drawing lines, let's make it more specific. Like, what do you mean drawing lines into what regard?
I guess in you're saying that get sort of this exclusivist idea. Well, what that really entails is you've said that certain things are right and then other things aren't right. So you've made decisions about how reality works, how you believe that it works, and doesn't everyone really just have to do that?
Well, I think that's so. I mean, we could. What would be helpful potentially is to go into like particulars and explicit examples. Um, and for me, this is where I go into like the difference between um an opinion about something and then being like ideologically locked into something. Because like I have opinions about tons of things. I have opinions about everything. I mean, pick a topic. Ask me a topic, and I'll give you a pretty. I mean, depending on what it is, like I might have a high degree of conviction about a certain opinion, or more agnostic degree about it. But like, I have thoughts about anything. I mean, it's kind of a joke within the little corner that I circle in. Paul Vanderklay will love to make fun of me all the time because anytime I'll talk about something, I'll be like, "Oh, I have thoughts about that," and like it's like a joke because like, of course I do. I have lots of thoughts about everything. Um, but I think where I am now is that I don't. This is something like it's a term that I've made up. I call it like iconic thinking, or like Joe Rogan will talk about this all the time. Like I'm not married to my ideas. Like I'll change them anytime. Like I have tons of conviction and thoughts about my ideas, but I'm not married to them. Like I can change my thoughts. I don't equate my self identity to the thoughts that I have about whatever. And so I'm willing to have fluctuation on that. I don't think that it means that I'm like I don't think I'll put it this way. I don't think anyone that would know me would say that I'm like a morally nebulous, ambiguous person. Like what if you were to live life with me, I think you would have a pretty concrete idea of who I am as a person, but I'm not going to like especially online or here, I'm not going to sit here about any particular topic and browbeat someone or sit here and apologetically, dogmatically debate someone about an idea because there's no, there's no, to me, there's no utility or love in that. That's more about just like, I don't know, like egoic gamesmanship or something.
You think that there are ideas that we should marry up with, and do you think that there are some ideas that are worth trying to convince others of?
Maybe, but even if that's true, I don't think that's how people change their ideas. Like I don't belief is even a voluntary thing. I think belief is rooted in love and admiration, which isn't even voluntary. So like me trying to convince someone of something rationally isn't going to change their mind.
Love and admiration surprises me. I would love to hear you say more about that because it's not what I would have said.
I think who you admire is a like, I don't think admiration is subject to your will. I would say that, or
Yeah,
definitely subject to your intellect.
I see.
There,
I
there,
see what you mean.
there's usually like a je ne sais quoi about it. There's something intangible about it that you can't even name. It's like a intuitive perception of a person that for some reason you just admire or want to emulate. It's rooted in more of
Yeah.
like a Girardian mimesis. Like you almost sense the essence of a person, and whatever it is, you admire it and you respect it. And then I think
Yes.
rooted within that, in almost like a Russian doll kind of a way, they may hold certain opinions that then you, for whatever reason, will start to consider more strongly or something. But to me, it's rooted in admiration and love of a person.
Mm,
Like, that is the greater reality that then the opinion is nested in. Like, I think the myth
that's
of
a beautiful way to say
rationalism
it.
is that we hold opinions based off of like rational dissection and analysis of ideas, which I think is crazy.
Yeah, what you just said, it sounds really beautiful, and I'm gonna have to spend more time thinking about the nestedness
Is that
because
similar to? Sorry, go ahead, Craig. Continue. Sorry, don't want to interrupt.
well, Luke, what I would have said, which I wonder if you think this is compatible. Uh, I would have said that people typically change their minds not because they're exposed to the logical consistency of that possibility, but they change their minds because they're exposed to the aesthetic consistency of the idea. But I had never considered that. I'd never considered them being kind of nested inside each other, or that they might have a different type of relationship.
Well, Jason, I want to hear what you have to say. My quick response to that would be, I'm a big fan of, and there's a lot to unpack in this, but like, I love metaphysics and ontology, and I'm a big fan of relational ontology and personalism. I think everything is rooted in. I think all of reality is made up of relationships, most fundamentally, and I think relationships are bound up within persons, and so your aesthetic dimension versus merely rational dimension, like whether it's um, beauty, like the beauty is a concept that I've been thinking of a lot, or an idea is like, there's that phrase, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I think that is very, very true. And I think that's one of those lines that you could meditate on and dissect and break apart in about a million different ways and teach. You could probably teach like a 4-year degree on beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And I think I think it's a very solid statement that's condensed
Mm.
like a little thing. Sorry, Jason, what were you
Well,
thinking?
when you were saying that earlier, and Craig brought up the nestedness of the idea or the opinion being nested in something, it kind of just reminded me how Jordan Peterson says something. He says, I was going to ask if it's the way he says truth nested within love, because I think he uses that
Yeah.
phrase sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's Peugeot had a video about that like a few years ago, and I think that's very true. It's kind of like how love is the highest value, which to me is a very Christian idea. You know, faith, hope, and love, and the grace of these is love. Love is the reality in which everything participates, and everything, like, that's the greatest of the Russian dolls. And even that, love is a fundamentally relational reality, but it's kind of like, and this goes back to the whole truth thing and where you draw lines. Like, love is I would posit that love is a reality that will, I was tempted to swear, but I'm trying to keep this PG.
No, you
I
you
swear.
can't
Swear, do it.
swear. Do
I
it.
swear.
Cuss.
Love will fuck up all the lines you want to draw.
Yeah.
Um
I'd like to see what I would like to say, because where mine was going, where before you said that, and I don't know if this will be helpful, because I was trying to think of examples, because you brought up like it would be good to have specifics to go on. So at first, my mind was thinking like, because we had mentioned the canon, I was like, maybe I can talk about a library, like, and like a certain section of the library is like more holy than another, but you still have all the books. But then I started thinking about, well, what do you do in like a family situation when you correct kids? And I was thinking about um my mom, and so like there's her dad died from smoking and everything, so she's got a really, really don't want to see my
Yeah.
son smoke. I smoked for like 4 years straight, very, very heavily, and then I quit. And it was last year. Um, I ended up just like picking up a pack, and I was like, I smoked a few, and then I was like, if I'm gonna smoke another one, I need to just straight up tell her. And so I called her and told her, and uh, she was just like, why? Um, But then she ended up calling me. She either texted me or called me later and said, like, that's not uh like basically just flat out said, like, I don't want you doing that, but I'm gonna love you through it type thing. So it's like that love will still, yeah, it doesn't, I don't know, it's weird. It doesn't necessarily like destroy that walk she's kind of put up, but it kind of does. Like it reaches through it or something weird. Like the wall, like that rule or truth or whatever remains, because she still doesn't want me to smoke. But
Mhm.
it's like, but it's still not going to let me go. It's going to reach beyond it or something. Somehow break through that barrier and still hold on to me. And it's like I wasn't excommunicated or anything, or I wasn't cast out. But it would be something still where she would be like, "Well, don't. I'd ask that you don't do it in my house. Don't do it."
Mhm.
So like there is still some sort of, that's where my mind was going, like, thinking about, like, well, there's still some sort of walls there. And then another example that came to my mind is, like, my parents growing up, it was, like, certain words, like, you would never say piss or something. We wouldn't say crap or something like that, and those were bad words. And then, of course, like, all their kids end up saying it. Like, me and all my sisters say it and say crap. And then I remember the first time hearing my mom say crap or something, and it's just, like, you get this weird feeling as the kid being like, you shouldn't say it. Like, even though I'm breaking the rule, like,
Busted.
yeah. I don't know. Like, you kind of still want him to hold that line or something.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what it is, but yeah. I'm not sure what to do with all that. That's just where my mind was going. But
Mitch, I want to hear what's going through your head. You had said, you had asked, are there certain things that are worth uh, locking onto? And I think you said it differently. But what's going through your head?
Well, I end up thinking that you do have to marry up with some ideas. And it's something I haven't figured out yet because, well, probably just the era I'm growing up in is part of it. Got a lot of postmodern sensibilities, but I haven't figured it out yet too because you can be wrong. Uh, so no, I haven't figured it out, but I end up thinking most of the time you do have to find ideas to marry up with, and they are worth trying to convince others of. And it's an interesting thought that maybe the best way to send your ideas out into the world is to become someone that's admirable, because we emulate those we admire. I think that's what was kind of being said, rather than trying to lay out an argument for why something is valuable. Then you become admirable. You become uh, lovable. Uh, so I'm not sure. I don't think you can really get around rationalizing things in the end. I think that's kind of inevitable.
I'm not sure what to think about the getting married to the idea. A big thing we're going to run into is just that we have different personality dispositions, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing because if every generation of human beings continues to have, let's say, lie in a distribution and have different opinions about this stuff, it means that it's helping us have functional societies because we can have a distribution of ideas and the distribution of approaches to the same problem.
Yeah,
I
it's interesting. Like it's really getting interesting into these topics because it's just, part of me, my heart breaks for like conservatives and older generations because uh with where we are in the West or in the melting pot, like first of all, like I mean when you go to India, it's like the races aren't combined. Like you have all this racial stuff too. Then you have all the different religions here. You've got everything. And now there's the internet. And so it's just a flood of interconnectivity that wasn't there before that they have to wrestle with. Like that any conservative has to wrestle. And so it's a flood of ideas, not
it's
only
like
that you might
it's their nightmare. It's
yeah,
their demon. It's
yeah,
the
yeah.
chimeric demon.
Yeah, and so they're wrestling with that, and so their immediate reaction, like you would say, is just put up more walls, like keep this monster out. And I mean, it's understandable because it's like it's scary, and and you don't know how to deal with it. Like even if you get confronted with an idea that you don't necessarily even disagree with, but you just haven't thought about it enough, it's still kind of scary, especially when someone asks you to talk about it or something like that.
Right.
You're like, I don't know what to do here, especially if you have some weird voice in the back of your head saying like, uh, this is this is not what you grew up thinking or something. But they're like Mitch said, sometimes your ideas are wrong. But then on the
Yes.
same at the same side too, it's like what was going through my mind earlier is I'm like, you know, because I was thinking about parenthood, and like Mitch was saying, and Luke's a parent too. I guess he probably had to just take off suddenly, but I kind of wanted to ask him because it's like how it seems like there's some sort of how do you raise children? Like it seems like you would have to kind of marry an idea to some extent, but then there comes a point where it seems like almost all children rebel. Like you have the rebellious teenage years or something because they even if they don't rebel, they might start to question, or you might have that one child that starts to question your ideas. But then we go beyond that, and it's like everybody that had those parents that beat the crap out of them, like almost wears it as a badge of honor when they get older. It's like, yeah, well, my dad hit me this hard. Like you got the you got the belt, I got a switch. I had to go pick my own stick and get beat with it. And it's like, even though they disagree with those things and think they were wrong and may not do the same thing to their own children, it's like for some reason we grow up and we're like, yeah, but we all relate, we all connect on that way. Like our parents were really, really married to their ideas, and they like put it on our butts, sort of.
I really like everything you just said.
So I'm like, I don't know what to do with it. Thanks. That's what I was wanting to hear.
It's like you have to give them something to rebel against, Yeah.
Well, yes. You know, Mitch, you said something earlier that really caught my attention. You used language like you said you can't just be kind of swimming in this nebulous place of nothing to hold on to, no foundation to use foundation language. And it caught my attention because my wife is, I think, has a more similar um, tendency towards like wanting a solid foundation than I do. I think she's uh, she values that, and she's like you in that respect. And she used similar language when we were first getting to know each other. And um, I think that's the way that she imagined my experience was. Uh, maybe I'm making this too personal, but the way I'll say the way that I experience it, I think I'm an extremely um, migratory person when I don't lock on typically, but the way it feels is largely the foundation is almost never changing, but it's as if it's kind of migrating, and it feels like it's converging. It feels like aiming and shooting again, but it's like there's definitely that like the movement is definitely like a fundamental feature, but it doesn't feel like I'm swimming in the unknown completely. It's actually largely, I mean, like majority solid ground, but it's just that the solid ground migrates.
Yeah. I see. So you could maybe even describe it as like when you do go into those other spaces. It's like you're in an arc or something, right? Like you have some stability in the
Yeah, that's a that's a really interesting analogy.
um I don't know, because I mean, you're not gonna just swim out in the ocean and just keep swimming. Like you would build a boat first or something. You'd have some sort of stable ground before you'd go out there, or otherwise you'd just be a moron. Same thing with going into space. Like you're not gonna get in a cannon and shoot yourself up there. You're gonna get in like a rocket ship, somewhere contained,
Yeah.
uh,
Oh.
somewhere stable. Yeah, but that's really interesting to me what you said about Ruthie though, because she does abstract art, which is
Mhm.
a lot more, you could say, chaotic. It's undefined.
It is
And so
chaotic.
it's interesting that her personality is different. That's really interesting. I'd like to pick her brain about that sometime. There's this, I think I mentioned this quote before too, though, and it was, this ran through my head when you were talking about, I think it was on that Netflix show of Lost in Space. There's not, I don't know that a whole lot of that show stood out to me, but this one line just like, I don't know why it just like kind of stuck with me, but she was talking about, I think it was the mom in the show was talking about when she was first going to go off into space into this unknown, the nebulous, you could say, or whatever. And she was going to go out
Mhm.
there, and her grandmother, her mom, so the grandmother, the mom, and so her mom, I think, didn't want her to go. She's like the grandmother lady, and she said this line to her, and she said, "Who's going to look after the farm?" And it was like the daughter didn't want that. She wanted to go explore, go into the nebulous. But then it's like you have the other personality that stays home. And that just always stood out to me because I'm like, I just want, even if I want to go off here out into this weird place, I'd like having someone looking, I like having a farm to go back to. And if I'm not going to
Yeah.
stay there and look for it, it's going to disappear. And so it's
Yeah.
like you like
You
having
need
those
both.
people, you like having those people that'll almost that'll keep that yeah, keep the farm, I guess, keep the house.
That you're totally right about that. You're totally right about that. The imagery that is uh, pulling out of my brain is just it's an image of early civilizations. We're living in villages. There's people who have to go outside of the village to go and bring in things that are valuable, and there's people that have to tend to the stuff that is already valuable and that needs to be maintained and protected.
Yeah, and protect it too is the thing. I think that's the thing too. I think that's what people's when people get married to their ideas, that's maybe hopefully I would think. I would hope that that's
Mm.
the their true intention or the true motivation of their heart is something like protection. And I think the majority of the case, if you really dig down, and you keep pressing them, I think it might get to something like that. And you'd be able to dig that out of them. But a lot of times it just comes across as bigotry. Although I guess a lot of times it can come. It is maybe just bigotry. I don't know. It could be. What do you guys
Mm.
think?
Thank you. Who was it that talked about Lot's daughters and
Goodness.
marrying the ideas? Remember that, Jason?
Oh, was it Peugeot? It probably was Peugeot. I don't even
Maybe it
remember
was.
anymore.
I
Lots of
don't know.
daughters. Yeah, I remember you
There's
brought that up. Yeah, let's hear more. Sorry.
there is a refrain of like, I don't know what this would even mean, but it seems like the refrain is, "Don't marry outside of this nation," but don't you also get the laws about not marrying within like your family unit, kind of. So I don't know what these two,
Mm.
how these two could work together, but they're both there.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like we do agree in societies there are some things that we're just not going to explore because they're too unsafe. They're too um, they're too dangerous. And so in that way, like it does seem like culturally we lock on to certain things and say that's off limits. That's what I mean. Kind of that's tabooness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and my thought is that we have to do that at some level.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with you. I think that's adaptive. It's a really positive feature of our behavior. But I think when we disagree. I would say that we have to do that, but it's not as if the things that are off limits are always the things that have to be off limits. Like they're going to be
Mhm.
they're going to be changed less frequently. That doesn't mean that they're not going to change.
Yeah. I guess it's just truth and mercy, man.
What do you mean by that?
The cat is married. I'm thinking of that cat picture Cal sent Jason every time he hears word mercy. Go ahead, Mitch. What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Well,
The law is
I
the
desire
law.
mercy, not sacrifice, right? You know, he, is it unlawful to do good on the Sabbath? No. It's unlawful to do on the Sabbath. What are you talking about? Oh, it's not unlawful to do good on the Sabbath. And the law is the law. And heck if I'm going to break it. But if you can forgive, but you got to give the kids something to rebel against, right? Got to have the law.
Well, there's got to be structure. You can't be swimming out in foundationless ocean, like you said.
The spirit of the law, not the letter of the law, they say.
So you
Can I
could-
ask you?
Go ahead.
Well, I want to, if I can, I want to bring you guys back to this question about Christianity being anchored more towards a tendency towards no updates. You know, like being anchored in kind of a canonical.
It's interesting. It's like within canon, there's ever more to explore. But when you discover something new, when you hit a new frontier, it's still within the canon.
What do you mean by that?
It's just the depths of scripture is like I think that's what you mean, right? The
Mhm.
yeah, but and I've wondered this before. I wondered if you can do that in other literary works. Because even my like I've read basically, just the Bible or just Calvin and Hobbes and I've read George MacDonald. But even reading George MacDonald, it's
Yeah.
like once I read this story, then I can read another story. And then I'm starting to making myself familiar with the author and the way he uses words and the way he uses symbols in that. And so the depths of his work has been like going down a rabbit hole. Like it's just you can keep pulling more out of it. It's like a spring or a fountain.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many literary works you could do that with, but the Bible is that. Yeah, I've found it to be that way. Like you could, it is incredibly deep and profound beyond explanation. So
Yes. Well, I think that's a wonderful point because as it persists through history, there's all this, let's say these augmentations of it. There's all this kind of ecosystem around it. Like we have Dante and Milton have our vision of the Christian tradition is probably as influenced as the let's say the bonus features or like the fan content as it is like the canonical stuff. And
Yeah.
so that is kind of a mechanism where it does shift around. So I think there's a strong argument to be made that especially as time goes on, like a canonical text is okay. I'm kind of interested in your opinion on the idea about a canonical interpretation, because my feeling is a lot of Christians believe that there's a canonical interpretation. And of course, this is the postmodern problem.
that would be a better. I think that's the better question to ask.
That's
actually.
contained in your connectionist churches, right? So as I talk, where did Luke go? Because as I talk to more Eastern Orthodox people, they're enlightening me on this idea of a canonized interpretation. The interpretation's already there. It's been there. It's been preserved. And so we put ourselves at hazard when we try to generate new interpretations of that. Well, this is sort of new on me as a Protestant, because it's always been, well, you've got your Bible, your interpretation's kind of fair game, although we don't usually act that way. we might say, well, I'm talking too much, but
No, you're not talking enough.
Yeah.
we might say that we've gotten this idea from Scripture on its own. When in reality, we are really often leaning on generations of preserved interpretation. So anyway, it's more of a connectionist church thing, which I didn't grow up in. So
I don't know that word you're using. You said connectionist.
So like your Catholics and your Orthodox, they have a unified interpretation
Like a
across the
creed,
board.
you mean? No, not necessarily.
Yeah, the councils and the creeds,
Huh.
the writings of the church fathers. I'm speaking out of my wheelhouse for sure.
No, well, I think Cal, because I'm in another text sort of with Calvin Luke, and I think Cal kind of brought that up recently too, was talking about the Catholic Church. Like if there's certain creeds that you disagree with, because Luke goes to an Orthodox church and stuff, and he brought it up, and he was like, do you think they could ever like kick you out of the church for something, for this or that or whatever? Because, and he was saying in the Catholic Church that'll happen if like you don't, if there's certain beliefs, if you don't hold to them, then you will be excommunicated or something. But it's like I kind of understand that to a degree, because I'm like you said, Craig, it's an order. I mean, you have to build a house, right? And
Well, this
so,
isn't.
sorry, go ahead.
Didn't the Catholic Church recently change their mind or have a
So I said
revision
this is a
related?
little different because they have a papal authority that's ongoing. I'm speaking out of my wheelhouse, but that's how I think they would account for changes.
They do. They
Right.
change things.
But
Yeah.
here's the
Well,
problem.
it's like they have a canonical system for revising the canonical interpretation.
I can't speak to it, but what seems difficult to me as I try to navigate some of this stuff personally is that if I have an interpretation that's been preserved, a canonized interpretation, I then still have to interpret that, and so it goes.
That's
Like,
a wonderfully profound point. It's a wonderful point, Mitch.
I don't know about that, man.
It is.
I feel very. This is not trying to figure out how we derive truth claims is of enormous interest to me. No, and I think I've married up though, and I think it's best. But
well, the weird thing too is like, I mentioned this to Cal too, because I was just saying like, Mitch is like one of the most, and it's gonna get to your ego again, one of the most humble people I know. So it's like for someone to be married up to their ideas, like you're talking about, like you have certain opinions, and we butt heads sometimes. Like you should hear our phone calls sometimes, but at the same time, like immediately after those phone calls happen, it's like, you're usually the one that'll text me and be like, "Man, that was fun." And it's like, I'm like sitting here, this like point of frustration, and you're like, somehow you immediately are, I don't know. There's just this love about it, and you're always like right there with this love at the same time, and so, um, it's never, it doesn't ever become a form of bigotry or become a form of um even though I guess it could maybe come across to some people as condemnation when you're married up to your ideas, but I don't think you do that in that way, um, because you remain so humble, and you will willingly engage in a space unfamiliar or uncomfortable to yourself in order to seek truth, which is like not most people. I think the thing and that Luke was bringing up is most people that are married to their ideas and opinions are not even willing to engage in something uncomfortable. It's like this is this is outside of my wheelhouse. You're out. This is gone. Like, and I've experienced that in the church, and I think that's what he's experienced as well. Is like when you ask a question, if they don't like your question, you're gone, sort of thing. Like, and not I'm not saying I got kicked out of the church, but just like the conversation's over, sort of thing. Like, well, let's not entertain. Like, I understand there's a point where you don't entertain the idea. I'm rambling too much now too, but but it's just like where people are. It becomes a place where people are not allowed to ask questions, and then that's what he's saying is the inbred hillbilly, because then it just keeps constricting on itself, and the ideas keep getting smaller and smaller in a way, and then you become so uh inbred, like because you just keep closing things off, like you keep closing off every question, and so it's like here's the creed keeps getting smaller and smaller or something to where people can't have an original thought at that point, and it's just does
So
that make
maybe this
sense?
is, yes, I think maybe this is the secret in to these laws. Don't marry your immediate family, uh, and don't marry outside of your nation. So you've got you have a like this broad stroke boundary where it's like don't change your foundation, don't change your God, because that's the idea behind not marrying out of the nation. Right? It's like because they'll introduce their foreign gods to you. And so they'll swap your foundation and it will be one that's on sand and you will be destroyed. But also you have these laws. Don't, you know, marry inside your family. And so maybe there is something to this idea of inbreeding your ideas and uh, not participating in the body at large. Like you get the body metaphor for the Lord's church, and each part having its own role, and not saying the eye not saying to the ear, you're of no use to me.
Yeah. That's a
You
good
know,
verse to bring up.
that's a nice metaphor to bring in again in a new light. Mitch, I relate with the way you describe being married to it, maybe in a different sense though. I mean, I'm married to it in the sense that I was born in a place and time where this is the tradition of my culture. So I've inherited it. And it doesn't make any sense for me to, you know, to stray from it because it's ours, it's mine. Um, I, I suspect that's different than the way you mean though, but I wonder if you consider that a locked inness.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Um,
Well,
I'm locked into Christianity because I've inherited it. I'm culturally Christian.
It's it.
Yeah. And so in that sense, I'm locked in. I can't ever sever myself from it, in a real way. And part of that is just because all of my idioms and all of my mental models came from the culture that's this like Christian culture. And I don't mean like evangelical. I mean like Western. For centuries and centuries, all of our culture is fundamentally Christian, and so I've inherited that. It's like it's so deep in my
You're
thinking
in
that
an arranged marriage.
what's
I'm in an
interesting to
arranged
me
marriage.
is I feel like some of the struggle we have here too is that the Western, not only Western, you say Western Christianity, but it's like one of the fundamental things about Western is like rebellion, right? I mean, that's what the West is kind of. I mean, I'm not. You guys, you both know how ignorant I am when it comes to like things I've read. My reading level is not, but according to my understanding of history, it was kind of this rebellion and Protestantism that like protest that led to the spread to the West. I don't know that I could be wrong in that. It could have just been exploration, but then uh we kind of, I mean, even our whole legal system is structured kind of in that way, where like people Like it's not a monarchy over here. You get to choose. So if you don't
It's
like
all
the
it's
if you
all
don't like
about
the idea, you can throw it out, sort of thing. So there
totally.
is
It's
kind of
all
this,
about revisability. Yeah, I totally am with you on that.
which has been extremely helpful not only for the West but for the world, because everything that's happened in the West through that like has brought about such like prosperity in a lot of ways for a lot of people, a lot of innovation, everything like that. And so but then you still run into this problem where it's like, yeah, it's like the Christianity or the fundamentals of Christianity or whatever you want to call it, conservatism, that like is kind of embedded there. It's like, well, you're in the Wild West too, or something. I don't know. It's like
Mm.
that was probably the wrong metaphor to use
No,
there. I
no,
don't know.
no. I'm gonna be sometimes I'm conversationally greedy, and so when I say greedy, I mean that I'm gonna leap up and say something uh, that is important to me, and maybe it's not important to anybody else. Maybe it is, but it seems really connected to the idea that scientific thinking came from Christian thinking. I think we've talked about this before, like the fact that that Christianity brought people to a place where they believe fundamentally the world is something that's intelligible, that I can have a relationship with, that it's something that reveals itself to us, because they thought that way about God. They looked at the physical world and they said, if I attend to this, if I give it my attention in a really focused type of way, it'll reveal itself to me. And that was kind of the alchemical tradition, and then that was the birth of science. I mean, it's so related. Like that's in the same way, like that's something like science is almost fundamentally Christian in that way. But which is so confusing to me. The reason I brought this up, it's so confusing to me right now because it's tangled up in the idea of garments of skin. Do you know what I mean? Like it's the dual nature. Um, like it's I'll put it this way, it's as if the fact of Christianity, like Christianity led to a second kind of covering ourselves. Like we have this tradition of science where we're adding more garments of skin or more um
Man, that's
these
fascinating. Yeah, yeah. Like this it's almost like some weird motive of the heart. Like I feel like Luke I feel like this is maybe something he was trying to get at, maybe at a different angle or something. Because it's like, why are we seeking a truth claim? Like why are we exploring science in order to discover some intelligibility to the world only so we can use it to cover ourselves and like to like, right? Is that kind of what you're getting at? Like we're
yeah, well,
looking for a truth so we can put on another garment of skin to protect us from exposure, from being naked and
yeah,
open or something. It's a weird, but then
yeah.
we're going back to a place where we're uncomfortable, kind of a little more exposed to seek for more truth to cut so we can cover ourselves. And it's like, what should that truth actually be sought for? Is it
Mhm.
just to is it just to throw on another garment of skin, or is it actually to somehow given selfless love or something like that? I don't know. That's a really fascinating point. I haven't thought about that enough. But
Well, I suspect it's related. I like what you said. I really it seems, tell me if you think this is related. You have um, it's like Christ is wearing the crown of thorns, like the covering. It's like the garment of skin becomes not a garment of death, but it becomes like a garment of glory. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a type of putting on garments in the tradition that's associated with not a moving away from the tree of life, as in like when I say that in a sense that like Cain, like Adam and Eve have to put on skins as they are expelled from the garden. As Cain is expelled from them, he has to build a city. Like it's more and more garments. But
mhm.
there's a kind of putting on garments that is actually a move in the opposite direction. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
A
that's
move towards the
interesting.
tree of life.
And it's
And
really sorry, go ahead.
that's it.
Well,
But
the
I don't
image you
know how to.
used was interesting to me because you used uh the crown of thorns, and you what was the phrase you said right after that? It's um like a garment of death. It's or something like that. Like and the what immediately popped in my head is how uh not just Peugeot, but Christian. Peugeot will repeat it sometimes, but the fact that it's just like the Christian idea, the fact that Jesus destroyed death with death, basically.
Yes.
And so it's in the image of the crown of thorns. And I guess that's what, I mean, he talks about that too. That's what we do with certain, like even with like vaccines and stuff too. That's kind of the intention of what you're trying to do is you're trying to give a little bit of death, a little bit of poison to help you from the greater death or something. You're trying to use death against death is the intent of that or something. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to do about this idea or how to go about it. What comes to my mind right now is that, and I don't know how to tie it in though, is the verse that Mitch quoted, "I desire mercy and not sacrifice," sort of thing. Because you would make a sacrifice, right? God kills the animals. That, according to our understanding, it doesn't actually say that. He just says he gave them garments of skin. But some Christians, I tend to believe he just put flesh on them. Maybe that's a different story. But I think the most I ever heard, what usually is taught is God killed animals and covered them with the skins. So you have a sacrifice, but God desires mercy and not sacrifice. So I think the mercy is when you would sacrifice yourself so you could cover someone else with your garment of skin type thing. But that's just, I don't know if that's right. That's just where my head went.
Would you say it again? When you'd sacrifice someone else to?
You would, like, I could go kill an animal to get a bear cloak to cover myself from the cold, or I could kill myself in order to give my skin to someone else. I can offer up my life.
Yes.
It's
Yeah. Whoa.
I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Because that's what, like when I first read that verse, because what bothers me, it doesn't bother me. Like what Luke said earlier is what like intrigues me is the weird stuff in the Bible where it's like this is strange that he says this, but right before he says go and learn what this means, and I'm like, okay, Jesus said for me, and so I'm thinking about that verse. I remember thinking a long time ago, and I'm like, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, and I'm like, but mercy is a sacrifice. Like mercy is a sacrifice. If you're gonna give someone mercy, like that's what you're doing to yourself. You're almost like sacrificing yourself in order to give them mercy, because it's like, I mean, that's what Christ did for us, right? Christ said the same thing. God says Psalm he quoted. I think it's quoted in Hebrews too, like sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but a body you have prepared for me. Behold, I come in the scroll of the book. It is written of me to do your will, O God. So it's like sacrifice and offering you did not require, you did not want it, God, but a body you prepared for me. And it's like, well, what the heck does that even mean? It's like, because then he offers up his own body, and it's like we enter through Christ's flesh into the Holy of Holies or something. It's like he gives his body as a. So I think, I don't know. I'm just rambling on and on right now. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. But I don't know if that's kind of connected with the whole garments of skin and the technologies. Is like that's. I don't know how to even weave that in. That idea.
Craig's the procession of, being naked in the garden, taking this knowledge of good and evil and then realizing you needed more clothes, or believing that you needed more clothes, recognizing you're naked. And then it goes even further, and they build the city as another type of clothes. But then when Christ comes, he says you need to be born again. And so if you're born again, then naked as I came, right? I've started from scratch. And what he then goes on to teach is that you should clothe yourself in salvation, clothe yourself in righteousness. And you get all of these clothes metaphors throughout Scripture about clothing yourself in righteousness. So it goes back to Jesus's whole thesis in John, which is it's not about flesh, it's about spirit. How can I be born again? Well, you're thinking it in a flesh way. It's more about spirit. And so the clothes that really matter are those of righteous acts, of righteous works, and the works of God are, are to believe unto Him. And then you also have where Paul talks about how his righteous acts are filthy garments, right? So the same thing that could justify you is also the thing that can condemn you if it's not foundationally rooted. which was what was happening with the teachers of the law, and and they were tithing the dill, mint, and cumin, but they were neglecting. What was it they were neglecting, Jason?
Oh, was it mercy and truth? Is
I
that what
think
you're
so.
asking me?
I don't
know.
remember.
Oh, I
I
thought
don't
you were
remember.
trying to.
No, I don't remember. I thought you would remember,
The
but
weightier stuff of the law. It's
right,
something
and
like
what he
mercy and
doesn't say.
justice, or
Mm-hmm. So the weightier things of the law you were neglecting, but he says you should have done one and the other. So it's there's a lot to say that the clothing is the clothing that we have to seek after is not of this world. It's not of flesh. It's of spirit. It's something much higher. And it ends in another city, right?
It's a garment of spirit.
Yeah,
Perhaps is that what you're getting at?
it's a garment of righteous acts. And I can't remember the verse that I'm trying to think of, but the works of God is that you believe. I can't remember that, but anyway, yeah, it's you clothing yourself in righteous acts, not with righteous acts that would justify you.
but yeah, because you don't get any of those anymore, man. When you become Christian, your works are grace.
But even in Revelation, it talks about how their clothes were not soiled, that they were clothed in white garments, and then they go and they live in the city. So my point is, it reverse engineers the whole thing.
Yeah. What's such beautiful imagery about that too is it says they've washed their robes white in the blood of the Lamb. It's like
Crazy,
that is
right?
just so freaking amazing. Yeah, you wash your robes white in blood.
It sounds like a science experiment that you do in 7th grade. Like dip it in the chemical and it comes out. Like what?
Yeah, dude, I like that you brought that up because you brought up all our righteousness is filthy rags, and then when you were talking about righteous acts and like the first thing that popped in my head is like how easily we can weaponize that too, though. Because then even in that verse in Isaiah, where I think it's in some of the other prophets too, where God like straight up rebuke, just give out a rebuke for them weaponizing that. Like it's because what's it? The one that I found it in Isaiah took me a while, but he says, I'll just read through this first part. It's Isaiah 65. I was sought by those who did not ask for me. I was found by those who did not seek me. I said, here I am, to a nation who was not called by my name. I've stretched out my hands all day long to a rebellious people who walk in a way not good, according to their own thoughts. A people who provoke me to anger continually to my face, who sacrifice in gardens and burn incense on altars of brick, who sit among the graves and spend the night in the tombs, who eat swine's flesh and broth of the abominable vessels, and broth of abominable things is in their vessels. And then this verse was the one who say, keep to yourself, do not come near me, for I am holier than you. These are smoke in my nostrils, a fire that burns all the day. Like Cal mentioned earlier, the Pharisees that says, thank God I'm not like this sinner, like where you can weaponize the holiness all of a sudden. That's like
Exactly. Well,
yeah.
I mean, this is actually a pretty common refrain in scripture, isn't it? Where the very same thing is having two different effects on two different persons. Like it's a cornerstone for one person and it's a stumbling block for another. So
oh yeah, the stumbling block. Yeah, your righteousness can be your stumbling block. Yeah, that is one of the craziest ideas.
This is why I believe, you guys are gonna laugh at me. This is why I believe in a kind of anti-universalism. I don't know quite what to call it, but that everybody goes to hell.
I like this idea. No, I like this idea.
It's
I think if Luke were here too, Luke was a universalist. I think he would jump on this too. This is good.
Well, it's the dark side of God, because it's the reason I bring this up is because it's the dual aspect of the fire. Like the fire is both a salvation and I don't want to say a punishment, but I'll say it's a punishment because it's if you put something pure in the fire, or something, that's not the right word. There's some things that you can put in the fire that can withstand it, and not just withstand it, but they're purified. But there's other things that you put in the fire and they're consumed. And so you have in Revelation this kind of dual description of judgment, where it's like you have two different views of judgment. Like where one, it's like everything, like you have the sense that there's going to be this kind of redemptive type of thing where everything will be made right. But then there's also this casting out language but again, I'm being greedy, but I think it's really, I think there's this possibility in it that there's these hell. We think of hell as the sentence, but it's not the sentence; it's the trial. And that what hell is about is,
To refine
I
his
mean,
fire.
Christianity, right? Christianity is about living in a way such that you can withstand the trial of hell.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's the verse in Isaiah I love too. I sent it in that text when you quoted it, but I'm gonna read it.
Oh, please hit me with that one. It's not coming to mind.
Um,
The dual
yeah,
aspect of like the stumbling block. That I think that's so important.
well, because like in Ezekiel, it talks about this this cherub that walks in the amidst the fiery flames, like and it says you were in the mountain of God, and it talks about him walking in the midst of flames before he was
Mhm.
cast out, before iniquity was found in you. But this is the part in Isaiah.
Yeah.
It's Isaiah chapter 33, verse 14, and it says, "The sinners in Zion are afraid." So like that part, I'm just gonna pause on that part before I go anywhere, because then it says, "Fearfulness has seized the hypocrites." But what always kind of stood out to me is like it doesn't say just sinners; it says sinners in Zion, and so that's the city of God. And it's like there's this verse in Peter where he says judgment begins with the house of God, and then after that it goes on. But it's like, so I don't know. The sinners in Zion are afraid. Fearfulness has seized the hypocrites. And then this part, who among us shall dwell with the devouring fire? Who among us shall dwell with everlasting burnings? He who walks righteously and speaks uprightly, he who despises the gain of oppressions, who gestures with his hands, refusing bribes, who stops his ears from hearing of bloodshed and shuts his eyes from seeing evil, he will dwell on high. His place of defense, the fortress of the rocks. Bread will be given him, and his water will be sure.
Where?
Isaiah 33, I think it was. I just said it, man. I just closed. As soon as I close it up, Isaiah 33, verse 14 is where it starts.
Wild.
But it's who among us shall dwell with the devouring fire? Who among us shall dwell with everlasting burnings? It's like,
Yes.
that's God right there. Our God indeed is a consuming fire. Like, yeah. When he
And
shows up,
that's the burning bush as well.
yeah. Yeah.
It's the thing that's like ultimately vulnerable, but is not consumed.
Yeah, there's another one. This verse too. Isaiah 30, chapter 30, verse 32. I don't know if I should read all of it. Okay, in every place where the staff of punishment passes, which the Lord lays on him, it will be with tambourines and harps, and battles of brandishing. He will fight with it. And it's verse 33 is right where it starts. For Tophet was established of old. Yes, for the king it is prepared. He has made it deep and large. Its pyre is fire with much wood. The breath of the Lord, like a stream of brimstone, kindles it. It's just like, how poetically horrifying. It's just like,
Yeah.
I don't
Where's
know.
it?
That's Isaiah 30,
Let's say.
33. And you
Oh.
probably, what's yours say? Read yours, Mitch.
30:33.
What do you know what Tophet is? Because Tophet is like kind of the natural image they were given of like hell, right? I thought, because he says they will bury in Tophet until there is no more room. At one point, I remember it's like a place where they're burying their dead bodies.
Location where worshippers engaged in a ritual involving passing a child through the fire. Child
That's what Tophet
sacrifice.
is.
Yeah.
Tophet, yeah.
That's
I
where
see
they
looking at-
sacrifice to Moloch.
It says it's a term for hell when I just put it into Google.
Mm.
I'm gonna look at verses really quick. Maybe we can get some verses here so we can get more reference. But yeah, I mean, I think I love that idea and that you bring that up, Craig, because to me that's what I don't
How
know.
could you love that idea, man?
Because I'm a universalist. Because like
No, it's go on. I
No,
would hear this.
because you're I mean, everything's going through the fire. God's a fire. When he shows up, like he's gonna melt your face off like an Indiana Jones. I mean,
Yeah, but who can withstand that, man? Who can dwell with the consuming fire?
It's
because
frightening. I'm with you. That's
it's refining.
It's the dark aspect of God. You know, the reason I think I said anti-universalist, because loosely you could say that universalism thinks that everybody is going to go to heaven. Let's say
Yeah.
that.
Christian
It's
universalism.
it's
But this
anti-universalist
is,
that yeah, go ahead.
I want to get the real universalists on here to refine that definition. But rather than everybody goes to heaven, this is everybody goes to hell, and not everybody's getting out.
Not everybody's getting out. Okay, so that's maybe where I think where I would probably disagree is because I see like you said earlier, you see hell as a trial, not a sentence. And I kind of think the same thing is like I believe in a repentance after death, and so I believe hell is a refining fire. It's a place of torment, place of punishment. It could be seen as a prison. Maybe if you are judged according to your works, some would be judged. And what measure you use will be measured back to you. So if you're judging according to your works or wanting to be judged according to your work and think, oh, I'm such a righteous man, it's like you could be bound in a prison. Probably if you had good works, you'd be bound in a prison, honestly, because if you're just stuck in a place of because you're in a prison, if you're trying to get to heaven on your works, you're ultimately in a prison because you're just going to trap yourself and almost torment yourself by doing everything right continually. Not that those things are bad. I'm just saying like you will put yourself in a box in a prison, but like or if you do bad deeds, like well then you'll probably come to some revelation in the afterlife of like, oh look at this, like, or God forbid you did, because if you did come to that revelation, you would be in a place of torment. You'd want to like your own wickedness would torment you. And then but the reason I would be a universalist because if that is a trial, or you could say a sentence, but it's just not a ultimate sentence, where that would get to a point where it would refine you, even if that's at thousands and thousands of years, or it could be a second. It depends on however you want to perceive time is. I mean, it wouldn't be a second, but if time is like, not measurable at that point, so it's like, an infinity is like the same as like a second to us or whatever. Like it could just be like you go there, it's a blip of an eye, then you're like you repent or something, or it's like 30,000 years and you repent because it's like it would feel like an eternity. It could feel like an eternity or something, but I don't know.
How do you deal with the other aspect, which is the consuming nature of
The consuming,
nature of the fire?
like eternal consuming.
Well, we just had, yeah. Well, I don't mean,
Because
I don't know if I mean,
it can
there's all this burning up and casting out type of, there's this
yeah.
kind of finality, and it's, I mean, and this is why some people are led to an annihilationist perspective, because there's a lot of instances in the text that lead you to a sense that there's a kind of like a final burning up and passing out of existence.
There's a
Lasting consumption.
I want you guys to like call me on it if you think I'm like doing acrobatics or like whatever, trying to get at this point. I really struggle with that stuff, the ETC, eternal conscious torment, and annihilationism. If I'm thinking of someone else, if I'm thinking of myself, it doesn't bother me in the least. And that's where I feel like this is literally like a new thought for me. I think it was like back in the spring. It just hadn't occurred to me to think of it this way, but like, even when I think of like the old man I used to be, or like those things, it's like I want eternal conscious torment and I want annihilationism if I'm directing it towards myself. Like that's when I actually want those things. If I'm thinking of someone else, like I don't really want those ideas, like, especially if I'm thinking of a loved one that could have died without knowing Christ or something. And it's like, according to like my mindset, they'd probably be in hell. And so you could say this person never knew Christ. They did this, even they could have even been like a pretty terrible person, but they might have still been family or something. Or you just had these good childhood memories with them, like when you were a kid, and you're like, I would not want to see them eternally suffering or annihilated. And it's like when I'm doing that, I don't want those things. But then it's like, but if I am just looking at me, sure, I want annihilation and I want etc, because I'm like, there are aspects of me I don't ever want to think about again. I don't ever want to know of again. It's like there's parts of me I would like to personally take and throw in that fire and watch it burn forever. There's parts of me I would want to just like, there's parts of me that if I did remember them, there would be this eternal conscious torment. Like there would be like I can I can see my past self, and I could see when I specifically, like if I want to put a specific point on it, it doesn't even get about these little sins of like doing this or doing that or this good deed or bad. But when I've mentioned this to you guys, when I actually hated my neighbor, like that guy, I want him to burn eternally, and I want him to exist eternally and burn eternally, and I want me to be able to look at him and look at his face melting off and be like, that's why that's why I don't go that way. Like that's why I don't hate my neighbor, because this version of me is just eaten forever in eternity with worms, like continually devoured. And maybe that's stretching it and doing some acrobatics, but it's like that gets on a level so real to me where I'm like, I I want that. It's that verse in Lamentations. Remember my affliction and my roaming, the wormwood and the gall. My soul still remembers and sinks within me. This therefore I have hope, is what it says. Like I can remember this, and that's what gives me hope, because I I see this version of myself that's like, I don't know. That's just that, but that feels to me like a weird way of at least an unfamiliar way and a new way of me of philosophizing it, where I almost feel like I'm stepping outside of tradition a little bit too far to make my case or something, you know? I don't want it to come across that way, but it registers in a real way for me. I don't know.
I don't understand it at all because it seems like in this scenario that the part of you that was evil is like a separately conscious person that you're happy to see being tormented for things that you know other people actually do.
Yeah, which is interesting, right? But then wouldn't everybody to go through the same thing? Like I would want that. But if I want that for myself, I would want that for someone else. But then it's like you still get to it's not like the entire
Well,
person is gone.
this is an interesting point. This is an interesting point because if you imagine that, like, let's just say that there's a judgment and I'm a Christian and I go to heaven.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be me who is going unless part of me died.
Hmm.
Like if heaven is what it's supposed to be, like
A part of you
I'm an
died.
ass. I'm an ass, and I couldn't be allowed in there.
So
Do you know?
all what will
I see what
populate
you're saying.
hell is the person we left behind when we were born again, the
Oh,
other
I don't know.
aspects of ourselves.
I don't know about that. That's not the way I'd say it, but I see what I think that's the case that Jason's making, and I see why he is.
Well,
But
I
then again,
I
you kind
don't.
of you kind of like the ass parts of people, right? The, the weird.
Well,
I
the
guess you don't
thing,
you don't like the selfish parts of people, I guess, or the
my way of
resentful
dealing with
parts.
my way of dealing with that is I just don't think about heaven and hell that way.
Yeah. How do you think about it? How do you guys think about it? Oh come on! I just let out a whole weird thing for you guys.
Well,
Is it too much of a personal question, or
I think you already know this. It's hell is at least on Earth. Like it's at least going on right now. Maybe it's going to happen also in a cosmic, you know, space-time kind of way, as in like it happens in history, but it's at least happening universally in the sense that we do experience, like we do go to hell and we do have to either be refined or perish,
I would agree with that
and that's like
completely.
that's a feature of reality.
Doesn't seem right.
I don't think that's only
Yeah, it's at least.
it's at least, yeah. So that's why I think I would agree with it, because to me, I'm like, when you think of conscious torment, even it's like physical torment. Well, I shouldn't say that. I was about to say it seems light, but there is physical pain that is extremely hard to bear. And so when you're in it, you think differently. You think, "Oh, man, I'd rather have some conscious torment, or I'd rather go through anxiety or be depressed than deal with this crap."
Yeah.
But it's like, but I think it's some of it is too because the physical torment, like if your physical pain will bring the conscious torment as well. So yeah, I think it's at least. I think it's a good way of phrasing it. But I still
Mitch,
don't know that
you
that.
seem like Mitch, you have an objection.
Yeah, they're both of ours. I can see.
No, I mean here, well, I mean everything is. We have this kind of scale of pain in this life that we understand. We get frustrated and we are exasperated or overwhelmed by pain, and we think, well, this is so bad. We know that there exist things that are like beyond our imagination that people have experienced.
Yeah.
And so we see that scale. I think that's a similar thing going on here. I think that there's a I think right now the rain is falling on the righteous and the unrighteous. And so to an extent we're all experiencing God's grace. But I think the hell that, as I understand it, I wanted to say that I've been taught is one that exists beyond God's grace. And so there's no longer this sort of unanimous grace that we're all experiencing to some degree.
Yes, I mean this is the point. I agree. Well, I agree with you, and I think that's when we were speaking earlier, perhaps even before you were on the call, Mitch, about the left and right hand of God. I mean, he has an aspect which is the hell aspect, and he has the aspect which is the provisional aspect or the salvific aspect.
I got a thing to go here. This is gonna take it in another weird way. That's like normally not thought of this way. So sorry to do this again. When Christ says, because God says, well, there's a way in the Protestant circles I was brought up in where they break down the human person into three categories: the spirit, soul, and body. Right? I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. So the way I've come
No.
to understand it is you have your body, your physical body, then you have your soul, which they would always categorize your mind, will, and emotions. I've come to see now, like I kind of think emotions might be a spiritual category, but I'm still loose on that, not necessarily. And so your spirit, they would just say, is you. It's just you. It's your essence. I don't know if I agree with that other totally, because I don't know what that means. If you lose your soul, if you lose
You
your
mean
mind,
you
like
mean
then
in a fairy kind of way?
I don't know exactly. Like to me, your spirit's your breath. It's given to you from God. It's your life essence. But I'm like, if you lose your soul, what is that worth? Because you don't have a mind. You don't have a consciousness. You don't have a. It's like, so I'm like, I don't really like. It's obviously worth something because it's your life force from God. But anyway, but if you have those three, Jesus makes a statement. He says, uh, don't fear those who can kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Fear God who can destroy both body and soul in hell. So it's like, what's going on there? But then here's the way I was thinking about it just now too. I'm like, if you, I'm gonna look at the verse really quick because I think this might help me try to formulate what's going on in my head. This verse in Ecclesiastes that says, "All the labor of man." No, oh, that's not it. Sorry, this one. For the living know that they will die. Wait, right before this, this is an evil that is done under the sun, that one thing happens to all. Truly the hearts of the sons of men are full of evil. Madness is in their hearts where they live, but after that they go to the dead. But for him who is joined to all the living there is hope. For a living dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing, and they have no more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. Also their love, their hatred, and their envy have now perished. Nevermore will they have a share in anything done under the sun. So where my mind was going was like, you have the soul and the body, and your body right now is just your body. But then if we're talking going back to garments of skin, like you can have a bigger body. Like, and if you're a king, your body could be something like your entire city, your entire. Does that make sense? Where I'm going with this, and so if you're thinking about, I'm trying to think of a good example. You could maybe use C.S. Lewis, and so you could say, in a way, he does still kind of have a body on Earth. He's got a bodily presence in Earth because people take his ideas and will embody them and act them in the world. But if that verse in Ecclesiastes, he has forgotten his love, his envy, everything about him is like somehow perished and his body is destroyed.
Mhm.
And his,
Yeah,
I
that's an
don't know if it's
interesting way to think about it. It's the body being destroyed would be the memory being destroyed.
no more
Former
fruit,
things won't be remembered.
no more fruits to your labor. Your garden's over, kid, sort of thing. Like you just light the whole thing on fire, then there's no more. Yeah, you can't have like anything come up from your labor that you left behind for the world, for humanity. Like everything you left behind is just like there's no more body to it. It's gone. That's just weird. Sorry, it's hard to go there.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's what I mean. Like these, I have no idea if this is the right way of looking at it. It's a really weird way. It's not. If I brought that up in church, they'd probably be like, "You're weird. Let's go. Let's go explore your metaphors with someone else." What do you guys think about that though? So if your soul and your body are destroyed in hell, um, how much do we look at it in that sort of way? Or I mean, I don't know. I don't even know if that's how to look at it that way. I don't know. Because your spirit returns back to God, right? That's one thing that it seems like always happens. I don't know that I mean, I don't know if your spirit is destroyed in hell. I don't know that it says that in the Bible. It says the spirit returns to God who gave it. Like that's his. You don't get a claim on that. So, but I don't know what that means. Like what does that even mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of linguistic stuff that we'd have to get out ahead of here, because as far as the distinctions between those three.
Yeah, then what does that even matter to? Like if your soul and body are destroyed in hell and your spirit goes back to God, like I said,
Well,
if your soul is your mind, your will, and your emotions, then what I don't know.
the spirit body, that triality of the spirit, soul, body, that seems really not explicit in the text itself. That seems like something that we believe because it's embedded in the layers of
You're probably
culture on
right.
top of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to at least go back and chase some of that down, because
Yeah, I don't know where that came up with. And I don't know how helpful that is either. To get into too much of the particulars of that is probably not helpful. I don't
Guys,
know.
I should go to bed.
I know we've been going on for a long time. This is so
when did you
fascinating though.
start?
Well, Cal started this off. I got home at I think we started at 8:30.
That's
Because he
intense.
yeah. And then it was fun because then he popped on and then Craig popped on. Then as soon as Luke got on, Cal left, and then you popped on, Luke left. But it's been going.
You know, I gotta say, as a participant, this kind of ensemble cast thing is really fun.
Yeah.
I'm sure that it's absolutely unwatchable.
Probably, I know, because it's like every time someone pops on, we got to catch them up, and it's like here's the refresher course, and it's never like this. Literally started with Cal, and I think one of the first topics that came up was witches. No, we were talking about dogs and cats, and then we were talking about how witches like cats, and then it was like down this other rabbit hole, and then daemons and familiars. Then we were talking about praying the saints, and I'm like, God. And there were a lot of interesting directions like we could have that I still wanted to explore more deeper on all those topics, but then it just seemed like we went somewhere a little bit where it needed to go, I think, and trying to get at what's more meaningful, what's more important.
I'd love to talk to Luke on a different occasion about his phrase. He said he wanted to unpack beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And that also struck me as something that has an enormous amount of pathways that we could have taken. So
Yeah, I know.
note to self.
I know. I wanted to ask him about it because he was like, that just starts to break apart for you when you think about it more and more. I was like, well, break it apart for us.
Beauty is such a stumbling block for me. I don't get it. I'm still stuck on that one.
Dude. Well, let's set up a play date. We'll have to put that on the calendar.
Okay, here's one thing we'll leave you with, Craig.
Is that
And
is that a blow pop?
Yeah. It's watermelon flavored. It's delicious. My favorite flavor.
Mm.
Yeah, I got a soda pop here. I got a
What's the
blow
thing
pop.
with watermelon flavors are always like 1,000 times sweeter than any other flavor, whereas watermelons themselves It feels like they're in some
water.
ways kind of mild.
I know. I don't like normal watermelon. Shoot me
Guys,
for saying
can
it,
I
but
can I ask you guys something? I
Yeah.
want to be real pointed. Somebody was about to say something, and I'm totally taking it off the rails.
no. I'll say it before you go because I think we can think on it till our next conversation.
It's gonna sound condescending. I shouldn't say it. I won't say it.
No, I want you to say it. I want you to say it. You want me to pause the
Way to
recording
go.
so you can say it, and then I
Way to go, Craig.
get it back in?
No,
Do you-
it's okay. Listen.
Good on you.
well, no, you
I-
have to
I-
say it. Do you want me to just pause the recording?
This
Yeah.
man that can control his tongue can control everything else, man.
That's
It's the
true.
rudder on a ship.
That's true.
Guy's got things under control. He's the captain.
What are you gonna say? Do you want to say it? It's your call.
I can't say anything after Mitch just applauded me.
Oh,
Even if he was being sarcastic.
I
No,
want to
it's
hear
dead serious.
I want to hear the condescending thing. It's a scripture. It
This
has
is
to be
what
dead
this
serious.
is the James thing, man, that
Yeah.
keeps sticking in my craw.
Are
If
you
we
married
can-
to that idea, Mitch?
I want to control my tongue, but I keep going, and you
You
have
didn't
to
do-
say things. So, I mean, it's not
Yeah,
trying to get a
well,
hold of that.
out of the well comes blessing and cursing, right? So you want to say things, I guess, some things. Yeah.
Yeah, but it does say that, but you're still referring to James because it'll say, yeah, exactly. Out of the same mouth comes blessings and cursings. This shouldn't be the case,
Yeah, show the mountain bring forth like what salty water and fresh or something like that. Yeah. You want to say the sweet things. Honey and milk are under her tongue, right?
So I think when Craig finally comes back with this thing, it's going to be much more crafted and ready for our ears.
I hope it's more condescending than we ever imagined.
More condescending than ever.
Yeah.
No, I
He
mean,
causes
in the-
peasants.
No, in fact, in the intervening minutes, I've decided it was something that I shouldn't have said at all.
Okay. All
You
right.
did it, man. You did it.
All right. Well, so here's the thing I was gonna leave you with though. So and I think the Orthodox, so it would be good to talk to Luke about this, because I think the Orthodox, maybe the Catholics as well, have an answer for this question, but they emphasize the good, the true, and the beautiful, right? And so when me and Mitch were talking recently, we who were we talking with? I can't remember, but you mentioned the tree, the fruit in the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah,
So
you
it's-
brought out how they all connect to those three.
Yeah, they all have the good, the true, and the beautiful right there in the garden story. Like Eve sees the fruit, that it is good. What is it? What are the three things it says? Like it's knowledgeable, for the knowledge of a
Beautiful.
creator.
Yeah, it's good to look at, good for sustenance, like good to eat, and good for the gaining of knowledge.
Yeah, the woman saw the tree was
Okay.
good for food, pleasant to the eyes, and desirable to make one wise.
True, good, and
She took it.
beautiful.
Yeah, and it's like, so that's I think where it's like we emphasize these three things, but then they can be, the serpent can like twist them up or something, and it's I don't know. It's just it'd be interesting to hear the answer on that, how they deal with that. So think on that, Craig, and then give us your answer next time. Hopefully it'll be
I've got-
condescending.
Here's a rapid fire.
All right.
Rapid fire description of what's lighting up in my brain. Although I know you didn't ask for this, I watched the Lord of the Rings series with my brother, the last two movies in the last 2 days, and there's a really interesting thing going on with the tree, because you guys know these stories well. Well, there's this Minas Tirith. It's the white city. It's a tiered white city, and it has a tree on the top. It's like Saint Ephraim's description of paradise, where there's the tree of life at the top, and then the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the middle, and then the fig tree at the bottom. And it's this whole thing is a mountain. And I had never caught that before. But then you have something that caught my attention is you have Pippin, the Hobbit, and he is always in the position to be like eating the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, because he's like in Fellowship, for example, they're in the mines and he investigates this skeleton and he knocks it down the well, and he unleashes this horde of death on them, and he's the whole series he's kind of, until Gandalf returns, he's carrying the death of Gandalf because his curiosity created that situation. And then you have in the third movie at least, he at Isengard he picks up Saruman's crystal ball, the Palantir, which represents, it's like literally a communion with evil, with Sauron, and because of that he reveals their well, there's good things that come of that as well, but he's always the character who's like eating the fruit of good and evil.
Hmm.
Anyway, I talked.
So you
about
like the show?
Well, these were the movies. I like the movies, and the show that just came out on Amazon Prime is really pretty. So yeah, it feels like Game of Thrones.
Have you watched the show?
I have watched the show.
I haven't watched it yet.
The two episodes that are available.
Oh,
How was
you were saying you watched the movies with your brother or the show?
I watched the movies with my brother, and I watched the show without my brother.
Which brother was this?
Luke.
Sean. Oh, we do need to talk to Sean. Mitch, you need to be in on that.
I'm
'cause
in,
we
yeah,
need
for
to-
sure.
All right, we need to set that up because that'll be good. I want to
love
dig
to.
in his brain. So if you should join too, Craig. So let's get it going. All right, guys, thanks for doing this. This is a long one, but it's been fun.
Thanks for letting me run my mouth all the time.
Yeah, same here. Same here. All right, guys, have a good night. Love you guys.
Love you guys. See ya.